This is Jocko Podcast number 176 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
Usually, when I write a letter, it is very much overdue, and I make every effort to get it away quickly. This letter, however, is different. It is a letter that I hoped you would never receive, as it is verification of that terse, black-edged card which you received some time ago, and which has caused you so much grief. It is because of this grief that I wrote this letter, and by the time you have finished reading it, hope that it has done some good, and that I have not written it in vain. It is very difficult to write now of future things in the past tense, so I am returning to the present. Tomorrow we go into action. As yet, we do not know exactly what our job will be, but no doubt it will be a dangerous one in which many lives will be lost. Mine may be one of those lives. Well, Mom, I am not afraid to die. I like this life, yes. For the past 2 years, have planned and dreamed and mapped out a perfect future for myself. I would have liked that future to materialize, but it is not what I will, but what God wills. And if by sacrificing all this, I leave the world slightly better than I found it, I am perfectly willing to make that sacrifice. Don't get me wrong, though, Mom. I am no flag-waving patriot, nor have I ever professed to be. England's a great little country, the best there is. But I cannot honestly and sincerely say that it is worth fighting for. Nor can I fancy myself in the role of a gallant crusader fighting for the liberation of Europe. It would be a nice thought, but I would only be kidding myself. No, Mom. My little world is centered around you, and includes Dad, everyone at home, and my friends in Wolverhampton. That is worth fighting for. And if by doing so it strengthens your security and improves your lot in any way, then it is worth dying for too. Now this is where I come to the point of this letter. As I have already stated, I am not afraid to die, and am perfectly willing to do so, if, by my doing so, you benefit in any way whatsoever. If you do not, then my sacrifice is all in vain. Have you benefited, Mom? Or have you cried and worried yourself sick? I fear it is the latter. Don't you see, Mom, that it will do me no good, and that, in addition, you are undoing all the good work I have tried to do? Grief is hypocritical, useless, and unfair, and does neither you nor me any good. I want no flowers, no epitaph, no tears. All I want is for you to remember me and feel proud of me. Then shall I rest in peace, knowing that I have done a good job. Death is nothing final or lasting. If it were, there would be no point in living. It is just a stage in everyone's life. To some it comes early, to others late, but it must come to everyone sometime. And surely there is no better way of dying. Besides, I have probably crammed more enjoyment into my 21 years than some manage to do in 80. My only regret is that I have not done as much for you as I would have liked to do. I loved you, Mom. You were the best mother in the world. And what I failed to do in life, I am trying to make up for in death. So please don't let me down, Mom. Don't worry or fret, but smile. Be proud and satisfied. I never had much money, but what little I have is all yours. Please don't be silly and sentimental about it. And don't try to spend it on me. Spend it on yourself or the kiddies. It will do some good that way. Remember that where I am quite okay. And providing I know that you are not grieving over me, shall be perfectly happy. Well, Mom, that is all. And I hope I have not written it all in vain. Goodbye, and thanks for everything. Your unworthy son, Ivor. And that was a letter from Private Ivor Rowberry, who served in the British Army in the South Staffordshire Regiment. And the letter can be found in a book called Last Letters Home. And it was his last letter home. He was killed in Arnhem on 17 September 1944 in the opening action of Operation Market Garden, which was conceived and planned and championed by Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. In this massive operation, overall, it's generally assessed as a failure. Although history has been kind and some people look back and theorize that it did have a more positive impact on the battlefield than was initially thought, but nonetheless, it didn't achieve its objectives, and there was a significant amount of casualties. And as I said, this was Monty. Monty's plan is the plan that he pushed. And as I said on the last podcast about him, this is one of the things that makes him controversial, that he led this operation, Market Garden. And as I said on the last podcast, he was able to redeem himself somewhat in the Battle of Bulge, but this negative was pretty impactful. And with that doesn't mean that there's nothing we can learn from that situation. We've covered it on the podcast, that battle from that perspective. And we have to learn. We have to learn from people's successes and people's failures, just as we have to learn from our own successes and our own failures. And on the last podcast, we talked about Monty's view of leadership. And if you haven't listened to that podcast yet, it's number 174. That kind of talks a little bit more detail, slightly, about Monty and his thoughts. And we debated a little bit the meaning of the word dominate, which he kind of puts as one of these driving forces as a leader, is the leader's ability to dominate. And I talked about how I'm not quite sure where he falls with that word, because dominate can have a very negative connotation. And I actually asked for feedback, and a bunch of people gave me feedback. And I think I landed somewhere kind of in the middle. I don't think it's the dominate with the hey, I'm just going to rule over my people. I don't think that's how he meant it. But I don't think he meant it in like, hey, I dominate my skills, and that's why I'm good. I think he meant it somewhere in the middle. And then I talked about the fact that one of the other major important factors that Monty talks about is morale. And he wrote another little thing about morale called Morale in Battle. And I think I actually wish I would have covered this one first, and this one almost trumps the leadership, his thoughts on leadership, because I think this is even more applicable and relatable. But it's good, solid stuff from someone that led massive numbers of troops in battle and saw a lot of war in World War I and World War II, obviously. So with that, morale in battle, and we're going to jump right into it. Here we go. This paper is an attempt to analyze what is at the root of morale in battle and thereby to discover how it can be developed. High morale is defined as endurance and courage in supporting fatigue and danger. In other words, the quality which makes men go forward in an attack and hold their ground in defense. It is the quality without which no war can be won. So this is a, and I'll get to this in the end. He talks about morale being the most important factor on the battlefield. Obviously, I think leadership is the most important thing on the battlefield, and I'll break that down a little bit later. But from his perspective, as a guy that had led massive operations, he feels morale is the most important thing. So without a doubt, it is important. Here we get into his thoughts on it. And again, I think you're going to see this, the stuff that he talks about morale, he seems to nail this, I think, even better than he nails leadership. So here we go, the quality of morale. In war, the moral stature of some men increases and their characters grow stronger and more closely knit in proportion to the discomforts and dangers which they are called upon to face. I've said this over and over again. War can make you stronger. War can make you a better person. This is something that Peter T. and I talked about when he first came on the podcast, and we talked about families that were slightly fractured, and if they have a major incident, a medical emergency, somebody gets wounded, somebody gets cancer, if the family's close, it'll make them closer. If the family's fractured, it'll blow them apart. He's saying the same thing here. Back to the book. Such men will occasionally perform in battle remarkable acts of selfless courage and daring, and will endure with extraordinary fortitude and patience the burdens thrust upon them. Other men, however, will, under the stress of hardships or dangers, surrender to fear or fatigue and will allow their characters to disintegrate. So the same thing that Peter T. was talking about with families. And this is the same thing with any team or organization. You have a team that's pretty close and they go through something rough, they get even closer. You have a team that's kind of fractured and they go through something tough, they're going to explode. Same thing happens with people's personalities and character in war. This disintegration will usually take the form of a loosening of the moral fiber, which results in timidity of action and slackness in appearance. He talks a lot about appearance. He's one of these guys.
Sure.
In battle, men who have kept a firm grip upon themselves will appear clean and vital in their appearance, while those who have gone to seed will be dirty and their appearance will be slovenly. So he's one of those guys. Hey, if you don't look good, and this is obviously, this is much of the military, they will judge you on how you look. That's not always true. Sometimes you get a guy that looks like a rogue street person and he's a good operator. And sometimes not. It depends. Similarly, timid officers will be found during quiet periods in the line, groveling in the filth of some cellar, while their signalers and runners, separated from the light, attempt to do their jobs by the flame of a guttering candle. In these latter cases, there's been a general loosening of the character due to a partial surrender to fear. So you get these timid officers, they're out there and they cower and they're scared. And while their troops are up trying to do their job. In extreme cases, men who have become afraid have sunk to the level of beasts. No longer in full control of themselves, they have become as sheep or rabbits, unable to act alone or think rationally. Their instincts have become those of the herd. They are either paralyzed by fear or gripped by unreasoning panic. Such men are exceptions, but they are a reminder of the value of high morale. The good soldier, the man with high morale, has not surrendered to fear and has maintained his personal standards. The bad soldier, The man with low morale has become incapable of independent action, and has to some extent shed a part of his human individuality. So this is what you get. People that all freaked out and they don't act for themselves anymore. They're just going to follow the herd. Morale is a mental and moral quality. It is a quality peculiar to human beings because it is essentially the product of a mind with a conscience. It is that which in battle keeps men up on humanity's level, as opposed to being a beast. But humanity's level is not high enough because the strongest human instinct is the instinct of survival. Morale is also that which develops man's latent heroism so that he will overcome his desire to take the easy way out and surrender to fear. So you got to be a little bit beyond human. Because the human instinct, the strongest human instinct is I'm just going to stay alive. That's my goal. You got to be more than that. You got to be better than that. It is necessary now to make clear what high morale is not. It is not contentment or satisfaction bred from ease or comfort of living. Both of these contain a hint of complacency, an acceptance of luxury as an end in itself. High morale is far more than any of these, for it implies essentially the ability to triumph over discomforts and dangers and carry on with the job. So if you're one of these leaders, if you're in a leadership position and you think, well, how do I raise the morale of my men? Give them luxury days. Give them Theo Von luxury days. Sure. Theo, negative, not happening. That doesn't do it. Back to the book. Because what you have to do is you have to give them challenge. You have to give them discomfort. Or not you have to give them, but they have to face discomfort. They have to face danger. And that's what increases morale. When they face and they triumph over that, that's what increases morale. Pizza and fine satin sheets do not increase morale. Mm-hmm. They might give a little surface nudge, but they don't increase morale. Mm. Otherwise, your morale would be through the roof.
Oh, through the roof all day. Wait, the morale is, so it's like not to be confused with, because you do need like the rest between sets,
yes,
right?
You need
like
rest,
but that's different.
And you can't just beat people down all the time, right? You can't. You have to get sleep. You have to get rest. You have to have some level of comfort, or your morale will get beat down. But that can't be the primary aim, of you as the leaders to provide comfort.
Yeah. It's not like, hey, let's boost morale by letting people sleep or whatever, or not letting them sleep, but give them luxury.
Give them 2 days off. How about 1 day off and we come back and train hard and we work?
Yeah, it seems like you wouldn't give them the day off if they don't need the day off. Yeah. Like you need the day off for something very specific, like some sort of a fatigue situation or whatever.
Bottom line is a dichotomy, right? Can you go too far with comfort and pleasure and leisure? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Can you go too far with discipline and hardness and sternness and scarcity of resources? Yes, you can. You have to find a balance somewhere in the middle. I think the point here is that people lean towards, well, if I want to increase morale, I just need to give luxury to the troops. That's the wrong way to lean. You should actually lean. I'm not saying go full bore, but you should lean in the direction of hard training, discipline. Lean in that direction. Don't go full bore in that direction. Yeah. Lean in that direction.
Yeah, it's almost like, you think about it, it seems like making them feel like empowered or strong, right? That's kind of the result you're going for.
Hey, let me just break it down for you real simple. If you go and you have a good training jiu-jitsu, how do you feel when you're done?
Solid.
How's your morale?
Good. Pretty high.
Morale is high. If you sit there and watch TV all day and you eat a pizza and a donut, how do you feel at the end of the day? How's your morale?
Shabby.
Morale's shabby. Yeah. Now, if you train jiu-jitsu 9 hours for 14 days straight, how do you feel? Broken down.
Yeah.
Right? And then how do you feel when it's like, hey, man, day off today, Echo. All good. Hey, guess what? I ordered some pizza for you, too. It's coming. It's going to be here in 15 minutes. We're going to chow down. We're going to watch the fights. Cool. That's a good morale boost. We're all good.
Yeah.
But you got to find that balance.
Yeah.
All right, back to the book. Nor is high morale achieved through fitness or healthiness alone. It is important not to confuse the idea of physical happiness with morale. The happy faces of men after a good game of football are not necessarily the faces of men with good morale. Morale is a mental rather than a physical quality. A determination to overcome obstacles, an instinct driving a man forward against his own desires. Oh, driving a man forward against his own desires. That's a good one. And he detaches the physical and the mental part a little bit more than I do. I think they're a little bit more closely related. I think that when you're in good physical shape, it helps your mental morale. But he goes on to say this, which is spot on. High morale is not happiness. Happiness may be a contributory factor in the maintenance of morale over a long period, but it is no more than that. A man can be unhappy, but can still regularly and without complaining advance and defend within the terms of the definition. So that's an important thing. And again, this is a trap that leaders get suckered into. Hey, if I can make my people happy, then morale's good. No. Pizza will make your people happy, but it won't increase morale. It might increase morale if you give it at the right time for the right reason. Do you eat Hawaiian pizza?
No.
Check. Is that just a lie?
Yeah, that's a complete violation.
We don't even eat that kind of pizza in Hawaii.
Generally speaking, correct.
Well, there you go.
That's the thing. It's like Canadian bacon.
What does Hawaiian pizza do to your morale? Apparently it's an inhibitor.
Yeah, it's an inhibitor. Well, like Canadian bacon, you ask like Canadians, like, hey, is this Canadian? Canadian bacon is just a little piece of ham, basically.
Yeah.
You go, hey, to someone from Canada, be like, hey, this is Canadian bacon. They're like, no, that's ham. Like, you made that up.
Have you ever had an English muffin before?
Yes.
You can't get them in England.
Because they're not.
They don't. Yeah.
Yeah, they just call them just like French fries, right?
Yeah.
Or wait, is that?
In France, they're called something else, though.
Chips.
They're not called French fries. No, that's England. I think they're called pommes frites.
Australia. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Same deal then.
All right. This is again, you can see I was in going through this to figure out what parts I was going to single out. I ended up doing so much of this one.
Yeah.
Because almost every line is like, yes, you need to know that. Yes, I need to know that. I need to remember that. So here's one. High morale is not toughness. This one caught me a little off guard. Some very tough men in this war have turned out to be very disappointing in action. Toughness is a physical and not a mental asset. Tough men will occasionally perform an isolated act of bravery. Morale, however, is not a quality which produces a momentary act. It influences behavior at all times. So that's completely true. And it's true in combat. It's true in training even. Like somebody like going through basic SEAL training, there were some tough guys there. Like tough where you go, that guy seems like a tough guy. Quitter. And then there's guys that get through buds. It's like, oh, they were tough in buds. Like they did some good job in buds, but it has nothing to do with how well you're going to do as a SEAL. Yeah. Like it does. I would say there's some correlation, but it's a very loose correlation. Being a good SEAL buds trainee has very little to do with being a good SEAL in a SEAL team. And I think that sometimes surprises people, but then again, it shouldn't really surprise people because being good at buds is a physical evolution. Has very little to do with your mentality and has very little to do with leadership and unit cohesion. And so to show up at a team, what's the most important thing when you get to a team? The most important thing when you get to a team is to be a team member and be a leader in that team or a follower in that team. If you aren't those things, you're not going to be good. You can be super tough. That's great. And there's times when it pays to be tough. And you definitely, as a SEAL, you can't not have some level of toughness. When I think about being a SEAL, there's stuff that you just do on a regular basis that when it's your life, when it's just the way your life is, you don't really think about it. Yeah. But when you take a step back and you think about what you, like when I think about my old job, and I'm talking about going back to the 90s, right? Oh, we have dive week, or dive training. So you go for like 4 or 5 weeks of dive training and you're diving 2 times a day. It's your wetsuit, your your wetsuit's wet when you're putting it back on, and then you're going to go get in a boat and you're going to drive for an hour and a half up the coast, and then it's going to be dark, and you're going to put on your Draeger rebreather, and you're going to get in that water again, and you're going to kick in the darkness with bioluminescence flying around you for 3.5 hours. You're going to get into this random harbor. You're freezing cold. You're going to plant a fake limpet mine on some Navy ship somewhere. Then you're going to paddle. You're going to swim, fin your way back out. You're going to run out of oxygen. Once you run out of oxygen, you're going to come to the surface, and then you're going to swim on the surface for another 48 minutes. And then you meet up with that little Zodiac boat. You get in, you're freezing, you're exhausted, and then you drive an hour and 20 minutes to get back to Coronado. When you get back, you're going to debrief. You're going to take care of your Zodiacs, then you're going to take care of your dive rigs, then you're going to take care of your personal gear, then you're going to take a shower. And then you're going to sleep for 3 hours, and then you're going to wake up with another dive mission task, and you're going to do the same thing again. Just cold, wet, miserable. That's the life. That's the life. So, do you got to have some level of mental toughness? Sure you do, and every SEAL's got that. But this part talking about, like, when you start talking about leadership and being a team player and being a good leader and being a good follower and being smart and tactically sound and being a good decision makers, those are the things that matter. When you start talking about just the idea of being tough, it's like, that's cool. And it's important, and everyone in the teams has that, or most people in the teams have that baseline. Because it is a little bit challenging to make it through SEAL training if you don't at least have some level. It does happen. You get some guys where you think, man, what happened to you? Or, you just break down. Some people have the idea that once they get through SEAL training, they're done. You shouldn't be in SEAL training to go through SEAL training. You should be at SEAL training to get to the SEAL teams, to serve your country, to go into combat, to take the fight to the enemy. That's why you join the SEAL teams, not to see how tough you are. So, next, in brief, high morale is a quality which is good in itself and is latent in all men. It maintains human dignity. It enables fear and fatigue to be overcome. It is involved with the idea of a conscience, but it should be not confused with fitness or happiness or toughness. So he goes to pretty good lengths to make that distinction. Section 2, basic factors of morale. It is now necessary to consider what factors constitute the morale of the soldier in the heat of battle. Certain factors may be described as essential conditions without which high morale cannot exist. These 4 basic factors are: 1, leadership; 2, discipline; 3, comradeship; 4, self-respect. A 5th factor, devotion to cause, must exist, but need not necessarily influence all of the soldiers. Finally, there are numerous contributory factors which are of great importance but not essential conditions. So that's what he's got. The 4 things that you have to have in order to have high morale. And then the first factor, of course, is leadership, which, again, he's supporting my argument that leadership is the most important thing on the battlefield, because if you don't have leadership, you're not going to have good morale.
Right.
So right there, I already got you beat, Monty.
Sure.
And guess what his second one is? Discipline. Where does that come from? Leadership.
Sure.
What about comradeship? So all these things come from leadership. Anyways, we'll get to that. Leadership. Morale is, in the first place, based on leadership. Good morale is impossible without good leaders. The quality of leadership is one which must be studied. Human beings are fundamentally alike. In that, very common characteristics apply to all men in varying degrees. This is such a great dichotomy of humans, is that all humans are the same and all humans are different. Right? Like, it's true.
Yeah.
How can that be true? All humans are the same, all humans are different. And that's a completely true statement. Yeah. In battle, the most important of these characteristics is fear. All men are afraid at one time or another, and to a greater or lesser extent. In moments of fear, they band together and look for guidance. They seek for a person to give decisions. They look for a leader. In times of war, the leader has opportunities denied to him in peace. The difficulties, dangers, and discomforts inseparable from the battlefield make men cry out for the leadership they can do without in peace. At such moments, men are too weak to stand alone. They find the burdens too great to bear and their own selves unequal to the task. The leader himself accepts the burdens of others and by doing so earns their gratitude and the right to lead them. So, challenging times, things are going sideways, bad things are happening. That's when people are most susceptible to leadership. This is completely true. Have you ever seen a team dynamic where, like, when everything's going good, pretty much like it might be hard to tell who the leader is, and then all of a sudden something happens, something that's chaotic or something that's challenging happens, and then you can see that leader just rise to the top.
Yeah,
I've seen that a million times. I've seen that a million times, putting platoons through training. Yeah, you kind of not really know what's going on. Who's really running this? Boom. You start hitting these guys with some down men and some IEDs in the training battlefield. You'll see the real leaders will start to step up, hopefully. Yeah. Sometimes they don't step up at all. And this is totally true. You see people want to be led. People want to be led. There's going to be sometimes a little leadership vacuum. Yeah. And sometimes you got to step in and fill that leadership vacuum. Back to the book. Consider a platoon, i.e. 30 men in action in the line. The men are drawn from all classes and all types. They are there in the line because they have obeyed a long series of orders, which it was easier to obey than to disobey. But now the test comes. It is easier for them not to obey orders. It is easier for them to stay where they are behind the hill and not advance over the crest into full view of the enemy who lies in wait beyond. The dominant motive force which drives them over the hill is the leader. It is his quality of leadership above all things which inspires the men to action. And this is one of those, he paints that out very clearly when people talk about, well, in the military, everyone just does what you said because you're in charge, right? Well, try that once everyone's going to die or once your lives are at stake. People just don't roger up to say, hey, Echo's plan's kind of lame to go charge the machine gun nest, but you know what? He's in charge, so I'm going to go do it. No, doesn't work. You have to lead. These men recognize in their leaders some quality which they themselves do not possess. That quality is decision. Fear makes men sluggish and indecisive, unable to decide and act for themselves. This is people talk about being frozen by fear, or have you ever had that thing where you're not quite sure what you're going to do? Like I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to. Even like something stupid, like not something stupid, but buying a house, right? That's a big purchase. You're going to lay down a bunch of money. The market could go up or down. You're committing to a payment for 30 years. There's not so many things in life you commit to for 30 years. Basically, there's only one other one. You're getting married, right? Is there any other commitment that's 30 years? I guess you get a tattoo. That's a lifetime, right? Yes. So there's these decisions that you have to make, and sometimes you see people don't want to make decisions, right? They don't want to make a decision. What's making them indecisive? If you think about it, what's making people indecisive is fear. They're afraid of what that outcome might bring. So if you find yourself being indecisive, instead of asking yourself, is this the right decision or a wrong decision, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Back to the book. The leader's power over his men is based on his ability to cut through this fear paralysis, and in doing so, to enable others to escape from it. The rightness of the decision taken by the leader is irrelevant. Think about that from a leadership perspective. If there's a decision that needs to be made, whether you're right or wrong is irrelevant. What you need to do is be decisive. What matters is that the decision should be taken and that the leader should shoulder the responsibility for that decision. The leader must convince his men of its rightness, even though he himself may be uncertain of his own judgment. If the leader will decide, the men will follow and fight. If there is indecision, they will hesitate and flee. In short, fight and survive, or fear and be slain. The leader decides. Yeah. Moving on, the leader's power of decision results from his ability to remain imperturbable in the crisis. His calmness prevents panic, and his resolution compels action. It follows from this that the leader must be less fearful than his men. He need not be impervious to fear, since men require a human figure to lead them. What he must do is radiate an atmosphere of confidence which will show his men that he is less afraid than they. He must have the moral courage to stand firm when his men are wavering. In this respect, they will judge him by his power of thought and action in crisis. Fear destroys the faculty of thought and paralyzes action. The leader must continue to think longer than his men, and his thoughts must lead to action. So there you go. Don't panic. Don't freak out. You got to stay calm. And how do you do that? You train for it. And when you train for it, what do you learn from the training? You learn how to detach. That's what you learn how to do. That's how you keep your emotions in check. You don't let them get a hold of you. The leader's greatest asset is the ability to act normally in abnormal conditions. This is normal face 101. To continue to think rationally when his men have ceased to think, to be decisive in action when they are paralyzed by fear. So that section is something you should always strive to do from a leadership perspective. Stay calm. Don't panic. Think about what's happening. He didn't say it, but I'm going to say it. Detach mentally so you don't get caught up in the emotion and the fear and the chaos. Next, the object of training must be firstly to select those who possess within them the potentialities of leadership, and second, to develop these potentialities. So yes, you got to look for who's going to be a good leader. And then you got to hone that leader. This is accomplished by giving the leader responsibility. Boom. My favorite cure for leadership problems is put people in leadership positions. A leader's character will develop in proportion to the responsibility with which he has been entrusted. The more responsibility you put on someone, the more responsible they're going to become. Think about the little kids, right? Think about a little kid. The more responsibility you give a little kid, the more mature they're going to be, the more responsibility they're going to take.
Yeah.
It starts with making your own peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah.
You should be doing that on your own. As soon as it's physically possible, you're going to make a mess. Guess what? Then you learn to clean up the mess. Every time you break down and you make that PB&J for your little child, you're taking responsibility away from them and you're making them a weaker human being.
And they feel it.
And they feel it.
I made she's 6, my daughter. I made her set the table. You know, the old classic one. Set the table.
Yep.
And she knew what it was, but she hadn't really gone through the whole deal before. So sure enough, she's like, she didn't want to. But I'm like, hey, you set the table. This is what you do. You're kind of, this is your job. This is your duty kind of thing. So once she set like the first one, and she did it correctly, she was rolling with it. It was her table. She was like, hey, I'm here. Boom. She was making decisions, all this stuff.
Taking ownership.
Oh, full on.
Stepping up.
Oh, yeah. And you could tell just in her tone, kind of like she was super empowered. Little 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And kind of to look on the whole situation where this was someone who didn't want to do it. It was a chore.
Yeah,
she didn't want to do the chore. But, you implement it, in my case, correctly.
You give them ownership. That's what you did, Echo Charles. You gave your daughter ownership. This is your job. This is your responsibility. Yep. This is how you do it, but you do it. You make it happen.
Yeah, and I use that term a lot. Make it happen. Yeah. And it's weird. I don't know what it is about that term with my specific kids.
Because that feels good.
Yeah, like you have influence over this whole situation.
Because think about it. When as a human being, it's kind of weird that you can make things happen.
Make things straight up happen. Right? Yeah.
It's a positive thing.
Yeah, man. And that's a good one. Make it happen. Make it happen. Yeah. And and adults do this too. I do this. We all do this. Maybe you don't. I don't know. But you know how if you say, hey, can you do this? And then whether you don't want to or you don't know how to, you're just sketch about, the whole thing. You ask a lot of questions. Well, what if this? And, people do that. It's almost like they put a bunch of excuses
preloaded.
Where to indicate, hey, I can't really do this, kind of thing. And it's almost like maybe it's like them being hesitant. Maybe it's everything, all this thing. So my kids will do that a lot, but what is, all these questions kind of thing, indicating they don't want to do it. Yeah. They want to throw up all this smoke. So you finally just go, hey, I'll do it or whatever. And I started saying that. I was like, I don't know, make it happen.
Yeah.
And they just do it.
That's
they
a
just
good
make
one.
it happen. It's all that. I mean, sure, the job won't be the greatest the first time kind of thing, but they have that attitude of just making it happen, you know?
You ever heard like the old guy that's like, when I was your age?
Yeah, sometimes that's me.
Yeah,
Now,
I was going to say, no, you just made me think that because I do that.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be like, when I was your age, I was in a SEAL platoon. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that doesn't work in my case. Does that ever work for you?
Yeah.
It does, man.
Well,
it never works.
Because, you know, when one of my older kids that are, you know, my age when I was in a SEAL platoon, it's like, you know, you're asking me how to do like some such simple life thing.
Yeah.
Or asking me to do it for you.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
Are you serious right now?
Yeah.
When I was your age, I was in a SEAL platoon. I was going on deployment overseas. I had guns and radios and encryption devices. And you're telling me what, you know, whatever the thing is, you can't make that happen? Is that where you're at right now?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? When I was your age,
I always feel like when my dad or whatever would say that, and I feel like if I say it to my kids, they're going to be thinking like,
but
it's
not
lived.
cool. It's not. It's. I'm actually saying this, putting myself like in a little bit of check.
Yeah.
It's like we talked about last time. You know, you can't just be like, whoa, when I was there.
Yeah.
No, you need to be. I need to do a better job. But it is good. The thing is, it is good to because the way it'd be usually my older daughter, my oldest daughter, because she's the one that actually is of age that I was in. She actually takes it in a positive way. Like she'll have a look on her face like, dang, I am actually being like really, really dumb right now to be even asking this. Like I can obviously figure this thing out, whatever it is, you know, the DMV. How do you set an appointment at the DMV? Are you serious right now? Are you serious right now?
Just make it happen.
Yeah. You can't figure that out? You never heard of something called Google?
Yeah.
Think of how easy things are now.
Yeah.
But you can't even do that? No, not happening. I was in a damn SEAL platoon when I was your age. I was responsible for stuff. You're telling me you can't figure out how to set an appointment at the DMV? Are you kidding me?
This is what I think. This is my hypothesis here. I think that you say enough like stuff to your older daughter in this case where she can relate, where it resonates. Like I get what you're saying and she gets it. Yes. But I think that once you say, when I was your age, I was in a SEAL platoon, she goes, she checks out.
No, that's what I need to be careful of.
Yeah.
That's what I need to be careful of. The other thing I'll get from my kids, which is, well, you know what I mean? They kind of, I'm not like, well, that's, of course you did that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. That's not true. It's not just like, oh, I did that because I'm more squared away than you are. No, you're actually more capable than I ever was.
Yeah, but
you just need to step up your game.
I know, Brassy, and this is my whole point. The thing is, you're correct with what you're saying. You're correct, but from the kid's standpoint, they don't believe that. Like, if my dad would tell me that kind of stuff, I'd be like, yeah, I'd literally think that's because you're you. Not to say that you're tougher or you're whatever. It's like, bro, you're you. You lived in the caveman days. Leave me alone about like figuring. But then if you're like, hey, go make the DMV appointment, go on Google, figure it out kind of thing, that relates to them. It's like, yeah, he's right. Yeah. And if she's a grown up, essentially, you know, she's gonna relate.
When my son was like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And my son's a good surfer. And I was out surfing with him and I was watching him surf. And I said, you know, he was paddling. I just caught a wave, like beautiful wave. And he's paddling out. And I said, in a little while, you're going to be a better surfer than I am. And I thought he'd say, oh, that's cool. He looked at me like I was completely insane. Yeah. And like it was the craziest, like it'd be like, you could see in his eyes, he thought that was not a humanly possible thing that would ever happen. I mean, imagine that. Like that's the look in his face, and he kind of just completely shrugged it off and was like, "Yeah, right." Yeah. And I mean, 6 months later, he was better than me, and now he's just like infinitely better than me. Yeah. But to your point, when you're looking up at dad, then sometimes this is an unachievable thing. Yeah. And actually that's not true. And the young kids got to recognize that they can outperform their lame parents if they put their mind to it. Yeah. And the same thing that happens with subordinates, right? You have your subordinate on your team and you think, hey, you have more skill than I ever had. You have more talent than I ever had. If you apply it correctly, you will be able to outperform me without question.
Yeah.
And sometimes people look at you like, oh, you're crazy. That could never happen. It's like, no, it can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen, but you got to train. That's another thing is people think, oh, well, this is natural. It's like, no. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. On the other side. Yeah,
no, and that's another thing. Like when I was on with, when we had Captain Plum and Jim Kunkel on, and they were like throwing me in the basket of being like them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey guys, just hold on, just check yourselves. I'm 47 years old and I'm barely hanging on to like figuring this stuff out. I'm not in the game with you guys in terms of figuring out what you all have figured out. I mean, those guys are leaps and bounds and iteration upon iteration of knowledge above me. And I'm just sitting there thinking, take it easy, Captain Plum.
Yeah, but again, that's just a kind of a matter of perspective, like that. Things can seem so much, like they can seem like something very specific, but just because of your perspective, you don't get the whole picture,
Yeah. All right, check. Going back to the book. His position as the man responsible for the lives and well-being of his men must be impressed upon him. In battle, his preoccupation with his men's affairs will give him less time to think of his own fears. The mere fact of responsibility will increase the leader's powers of decision and make him confident of his ability to handle any crisis. So you got to train people in these challenging situations. Training must also seek to equip the leader with the other qualities which will help him in his task. Here are those qualities. A leader should be efficient. He should possess self-confidence. He should be firm and just in his dealings with his men. He should be clear-cut and definite in giving orders. He should pay attention to administrative details. He should prepare his men in advance for any new experience they may have to meet. All these things are important, but they can never be a substitute for A, decision in action, and B, calmness in crisis. Yeah. Stay calm. Now, one thing that I get a little nervous about talking about decision and action is sometimes what that means, the way that translates to a young platoon leader is, I'm going to make a decision right now. Hey, everyone, boom, I'm going to jump into it. And you can't do that. You have to do assessment. You have to look at what the situation's going, and actually, you got to have a protocol of how you're going to make those decisions, right? You got to think about the way it's going to go down. You can't just jump at the first thing that pops into your mind. You need to think about it. You need to think about the options. You need to think about the consequences of those options, and then you need to see if you can move in the right direction without full commitment, right? Do you have to occasionally make full commitment on a decision? Yes. If you got ambushed and you're in the kill zone, guess what you're going to have to do? Assault through the ambush. That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do it decisively and powerfully and with full 100% commitment. Yeah. But if you take some rounds, but you're not sure if it's an ambush, well, you might not want to necessarily assault through that position.
Yeah.
So you need to think, you need to allow things to develop. So it's part of the art of leadership.
Yeah.
Was teaching young SEAL leaders, okay, you need to let the situation develop. Here's the problem. Once the situation starts developing, if you let it develop too far, it's out of control now, right? It's a little problem, right? When you look at it, then you need to look at the problem and make sure you understand the problem. Meanwhile, the problem in some cases is growing. Yeah. If you allow the problem to grow too much, now you can't control the problem anymore, and you're going to get crushed by the problem. Yeah. If you see a small problem and you jump right into solving the problem, the problem might not be what you thought it was, and you went at it the wrong direction. So there's a fine line. Like, decision and action is important, but thoughtful decision is what it should be. Thoughtful decision. And the reason I keep trying to stress and articulate to people that you don't necessarily need to make a full commitment to a plan. You can take a smaller step, an iterative step in the right direction before you just jump in. So that's just important to think about. How does all that compare to making no decision, well, making no decision is the worst thing you can do, right?
Yeah.
Making no decision, standing there in the kill zone, getting overrun by the enemy and everyone killed, that's the worst thing you can do. We want to at least make some kind of a decision.
Yeah.
So that's why I think he stresses the importance of decision in action so much, is because he's probably seen people be indecisive in battle, and it's a horrible, horrible thing. So yes, you want to be decisive, but let's take that one little step further. We want to have thoughtful decisions. Do we want to have a mental 20-minute debate over the decision? No. A thought can take 5 seconds. You can let a situation develop for 8 seconds, and you go, wait a second, I think this is what's happening. Let me confirm. Do I see anyone over there? Yep, the enemy fire is increasing. You know what? We need to make this move. Boom, you do it.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Back to the book. These are 2 vital attributes of a leader with which he will succeed and without which he will fail. These 2 vital qualities exist in varying degrees in every leader. Those men who possess them to a limited extent can nevertheless become adequate leaders by being trained in the qualities already enumerated. Such leaders must, in the first place, be efficient. This efficiency will impress itself on the men, thereby creating an atmosphere of confidence with which will partially compensate for any lack of personality. By this means, training can make men into competent but not outstanding leaders. There's another aspect of leadership in its relation to morale. The best type of leader earns the respectful admiration of his men because he possesses certain good qualities which they lack. A brutal leader who disregards the feelings of his men will not infuse them with the quality of self-respect. The morale of the troops he commands, regardless of his qualities as a leader, will not be the highest. So even Monty, who kind of comes across as being, aloof to the troops, there you go. The brutal leader's not going to have good morale, factually.
An element of self-respect.
Self-respect. There's a whole section on self-respect that's coming.
Yeah.
But yes, if you have a dog and you beat the dog and you're a brutal leader, the dog will not have any self-confidence. It'll be a broken dog.
Yeah.
You can do that with human beings too.
Yeah.
If you bark at your people and you break them down all the time, they won't be able to stand up.
Another way to do that in a more, or should I say less brutal way, is to do everything for them.
For sure.
Same thing, man. No,
be the easy button.
Self,
Yeah, if you're setting the table all the time,
yes,
your daughter never realizes that she has the capability of doing that, handling that job.
Yep.
She's
tying shoes, carrying backpacks, all that,
everything.
It's like, man,
if you're helping your kids, you're hurting your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, and that clarifies it even more, and it's so true. I mean, once you kind of latch on to that idea, you just see it everywhere.
Yep.
Like, man, you ever see these kids, like a TV show or documentary type, where they're in, somewhere in Asia or some village where the 4-year-old girl goes and kills a snake and skins it and then walks in the mud for another mile back home, cooks it for the family. Meanwhile, and you're like, dang, that girl's 4.
Yeah.
And she can do I can't even do that stuff, kind of thing. It's like, man, you kind of put it into perspective where it's like, these are kids who are just making it happen.
Human beings are so adaptable. Like you see the little gymnast kids.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah. They're 6 years old. Iron cross. They're crazy.
Yeah.
Doing athletic feats that are just insane.
Yeah.
And why is that? Well, because they were put in that position and trained hard. Now, sometimes those kids train a little bit too hard.
I think so.
And they can lose other aspects of their life. Yeah. But dang, if you wouldn't like to be able to do an iron cross when you're 6 years old, come on now.
Yeah, the point still totally remains. Yes, exactly right.
So let your kids develop and let your subordinates develop. Give them responsibility. Build them up. Back to the book. Moreover, it is important to realize that while men are dependent on the word of the leader, they are capable of much independent action on their own and are even capable of making their own decisions. So this is kind of funny, right? It's Monty basically saying, look, I got a little surprise for you. Little surprise. Your troops can actually think for themselves.
Yeah. Imagine that. Right?
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
And so obviously this is decentralized command, right? This is it. And you have to let your subordinate leaders lead. He goes on to say, British soldiers have much native character and individuality. What is required is that the leader shall give the initial and vital decisions along with which the men can work. So, yes. And you know what? This is actually, I'm glad that Monty said it in that kind of funny way. It's the same thing that we're talking about with kids, where you think, oh, well, my kid's probably not capable of doing that. Your kid is capable of doing that.
Yeah.
Your kid can go out there and kill a snake and bring it back and skin it and cook it.
Oh yeah.
You just have to allow them the room to let that happen and give them the authority, empower them to do it.
Yeah, fully. And it's so night and day too. Last night, I was making chicken. Yeah, I make chicken, and I usually make rice. In Hawaii, you make rice with everything. So anyway, so I'm like, okay, make the rice. I go, hey, I tell my daughter, she's 6 again, by the way. I was like, hey, make the rice. Here's the thing. I showed her how to make rice. Making rice isn't hard, but it's not like, in most.
There's some steps.
Yeah, there's some steps for sure. It wasn't, well, for me anyway, before I taught her how to make rice, it wasn't real obvious that a 6-year-old should be making rice, like not in a rice cooker too, by the way, just like on the stove regular. But I thought at that point, I was like, hey, why can't I just show her how and teach her how? Even if I don't teach her in one day, okay, the next time we make rice, which is going to be soon, we'll go over it again kind of thing. Why should she not know how to make rice right now? Why should I have to do this for her or whatever? Anyway, I tell her how to make rice. Super simple. Boom. Last night was the first time where it was her responsibility to make rice. She makes rice. 6 years old. Makes rice. Boom.
Boom. It ain't a snake, but you know what?
No,
we're
correct.
moving in the right direction.
Exactly. Right. That's
so
what I thought.
The point is that you, as a leader, the same thing. You let your guys run the operation. Let your troops step up and take control of something that you and your egotistical maniac mind think only you're capable of doing. Guess what? Your boys can get it done too.
Yeah.
And if they bat a 88 instead of 100, cool. Yeah. Next time they're going to get a 92. And the time after that they're going to get a 96.
Yeah, because that's a big obstacle too, right? Mentally, it's kind of like, sure, I could teach them how to do it, but why would I?
Well, yeah, you see that even more. See, in parenting, it's like, cool, my kid can make the rice.
Oh
now.
yeah, way more functional.
But in a team environment, our ego flares up because we want to be the one, right?
Yeah, especially if you can do it at a 10 and this guy's only do it at 8 at the end of the day when the job's done.
You know what? And you feel like that's your little power. Yeah, that's my little power. It's like, well, you really know how to do this. Hey, I better come down. I better come down and check out how you're prepping this stuff because I'm kind of the man. And you're not. That's where it is. Yeah,
kind of like when you let's say they had to screw on some stuff, or I used to work at a moving company, right? Mm-hmm. You know this, and at the end you load up the crates and you put them on the truck and you have to tie them with a certain kind of knot, right? You learn how to tie that knot, the kind that's super tight, but all you got to do is pull one string to get it. Cool little thing. So I learned how, right? And one of the supervisor or whatever, he'd be like, go tie it off or whatever. And I could totally do it. We've been doing this for months or whatever. And then, but he'll go and he'll check it and then he'll pull it just a little bit more. As if to be like,
puts his little signature on it.
Yeah.
Little signature from the man.
I see what you're doing right there.
But we do that all the time. We like to have our own little rice bowl. Speaking of rice, right?
Sure.
That's a weird term, but you've heard that term before, right? Like, hey, you don't want somebody messing with his rice bowl, meaning this is mine. I'm the guy that does this part of the job, and I don't want anyone else to know how to do it. That's my little rice bowl. Stay out of my rice bowl. There's a lot of rice bowls. I was never into that. Well, at least once I was actually in leadership positions, I was very. I'm not. I don't care. You're good. You come on and grab some of this rice, because if you can take my rice bowl from me, guess what? I can go find another rice bowl. I'll bring it in here and we'll have more rice.
That's good, man. Yeah, because that's not as intuitive, No,
it's not intuitive. Everyone thinks that everyone leans towards, hey, I want to be the guy.
Yeah,
the ego flares up. Back to the book. Good morale can be created in a narrow sphere by a good leader, but a platoon or company is obviously influenced by the general feelings existing in a division or army. So now we're talking, so you got multiple layers above the platoon or the company. You've got the army, the division. Good morale implies confidence in the high command and in the plan. And he capitalized plan, the plan. A strong leader on a high level can have a powerful influence on the general attitude of the men of a platoon. He cannot, however, influence their movements over the last few vital yards of an attack. On the other hand, a strong leader on the low level can make his men carry out a single fine attack, but he cannot sustain their morale indefinitely if there is a lack of confidence in the high command and its plan. That's a challenge. It's a challenge. If your troops are looking at the strategy going, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, you can get the guys through one attack or 2, 3 missions, but eventually they're saying, hey, what's going on? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. And vice versa. A leader cannot do without discipline. Do you ever think about when I say discipline on the podcast, you should put some little...
like a sound
like
effect.
Every time I say it.
True.
Especially when I say something like this. A leader cannot do without discipline. His aim must be to create such a disciplined body of men that all his orders will be obeyed instantly. This habit of obeying the leader's orders must be so instilled into his men that they will carry on and fight even though he himself falls. There's a problem with that statement right there, right? This aim cannot be achieved without discipline. The second factor of morale is discipline. So, a couple things here. First of all, I don't want my team to instantly obey all my orders without question. If I tell them to do something stupid, I actually want them to tell me no. On top of that, if you think for 1 minute that all your people do is obey you, that when you die, they're just going to suddenly sprout leadership skills and start leading, you're wrong. You have to raise them in a way and treat them in a way that they are being challenged as leaders themselves, and they're being allowed to lead, and they're stepping up and leading, and they're not waiting to instantly obey everything you do. Because if all you're doing is waiting for orders, you're not being proactive, you're not leading, decentralized command isn't happening, and if something happens to me, you're going to freeze. So this little section from Monty, no, I don't like it. Discipline is something that is important. You have to understand, you have to have disciplined standard operating procedures. You have to have discipline to stay within those procedures. But on top of that, you have to have the freedom to, when those procedures aren't working, to say, hey, boss, this isn't a good call. Here's what we should do instead. Now, does this mean you and I are going to have a debate in the middle of a firefight over what the plan is? No, because we work together. We trust each other. You know what I'm coming from. I know where you're coming from. And when I make a call, you're going to do it. And by the way, if you make a call, even though I'm senior to you, if you make a call, guess what I'm going to do? Guess what I'm going to do?
Follow.
Yes, I'm going to follow you. If you're like, hey, Jocko, punch right. Get ready to flank these guys. And I'm the senior guy, but you just told me to do that. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it. I'm going to support you. So that's what you want. You have to be careful, because as people, if you have someone whose personality is sensitive to that, right? And you say, hey, Jocko, punch right, get on their flank. And my response is, excuse me a minute? Just who do you think you are, actually? I'm in charge of this platoon. Why don't you just lock it up? We're not going to punch right. We're actually going to move. You know what I mean? That's, we can get into that situation all day long. Guess what's going to happen to all of us?
Die.
We're all going to die. So we have to figure that stuff out. We have to figure out that we have to work together. But at the end, one of us has to submit to the situation, submit to the other person's leadership. And by the way, there's 16 people in a platoon, in a SEAL platoon. There's 30 or 40 in an infantry platoon. It's pretty easy to get in the habit of like, hey, when the boss speaks, we're all going to submit to what he's saying. Oh, if my platoon sergeant speaks, okay, well, he barks out something, guess what? We'll submit to that. Occasionally, someone else will rise up and see something. We have to work and train together so that we know when we need to submit to someone else, or when we need to say, hey, negative, we're not doing that, we're going over here. These are challenging things, right?
Yeah.
Think of how easy it is to have the Monty attitude, and it'd be really easy for me to say right now, like, hey, listen, this is what happens. You'd have to have your men so disciplined that when you tell them to do something, they do it. That's the easiest solution, right? Oh, okay, great. Jocko's put out the word. Oh, and by the way, if I get hurt, follow the guy that's in the second chain of command. Okay, cool. That's easy. That's the easy day, right? Now we're going to win every time. No, wrong. Because guess what? Occasionally, I'm the leader. I'm going to make a bad decision. And somebody needs to check me. Now, are you going to check me every single time? No, you're not. Are you going to check me? You know what? We're going to work together so much that if you think, you know what, I'm not sure Jocko's making the right call, but at least I'm going to start to execute it. I'm going to keep a heads up. I'm going to move forward. And then if I see what I think might be a problem happening, I'm going to say something. Yeah. But my response out of the gate is we're going to go. That's the kind of thing that's going on here. This is a dynamic environment, interaction of human beings. It's freaking challenging.
Yeah.
But to blanket everyone, when I tell you to do something, you do it.
Yeah.
I want instant obedience to everything that I say. Again, that works great 94% of the time. 6% of the time, it's an utter disaster and everyone dies. So we don't want to allow for that. We want to allow some flexibility in there. That is harder to do. It's harder to have that flexibility. It's much more challenging. But it gives you such better capability and survivability that's how you want to set it up. It takes a lot more. That's why the more advanced you get the more tactically advanced you get, the more there is of that. So if you go to a Marine Corps infantry platoon, they're going to have less pushback and they're going to have more obedience, more just straight rote obedience, as they should. Because guess what? An 18-year-old Marine doesn't have as much knowledge as a 25-year-old staff sergeant, or the platoon commander that went to the basic school, and he's right. So you're gonna have these situations that are gonna. So in a normal infantry platoon, there's gonna be less pushback. You get into a SEAL platoon, well, now you've got a bunch of experienced guys. Just about everyone there has a few deployments. The new guys aren't gonna say anything. But the guys with 2 or 3 platoons, they're going to say, hey, boss, not a good call, or they're going to give you some pushback. Why? Because you've got a more experienced field of people. So it takes more practice to get to be able to interact together properly and have that flowing chain of command that's docile and can expand and contract and can move from one person to the next dynamically as a mission is happening. I mean, there's times in close quarters combat where basically there's a person at the front of the train and that person rotates out every few seconds. There's tactical situations where there's a new person making the calls every 10 seconds. Yeah. Think about that. That's radical. To have a new person making a call every 10 or 15 seconds, there's a new person doing it. How do you do that? Well, they understand. Everyone understands. They understand the tactics. They understand how we work together. That's what we want. As opposed to there's only one person that can make the call. That's just centralized command. So again, it's it's hard for me to throw this out there, right? Because I don't want an 18-year-old Marine thinking, well, if I don't like what the platoon commander says, I'm just going to tell him no. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. Not what I'm saying. I do want you to think. Yeah. I do want you as an 18-year-old Marine to think. I want you to be understanding what decision is being made to the best of your ability. And yes, if you see something happening that is absolutely not good and you know it, you're damn right you should speak up. And your platoon commander should be happy that you're speaking up. Yeah. But if you're a guy that's going to speak up every time a decision gets made because you think maybe of a different way that might be a little bit better in your mind, right, you're going to suffer the consequences of, number one, the whole platoon being indecisive, and number two, your boss is going to tell you to shut up. Because your idea that might be 8% better than his idea, we don't have time to discuss that right now. Yeah. So unless you see something that's real significant, yeah, shut up and do what you're told. If you see something that's really significant, okay. Hey, boss, negative, can't do that. There you go. The second factor, discipline. The object of discipline is the conquest of fear. This is a new perspective for me. That the reason we have discipline is to conquer fear. Okay. It's interesting, right? Yeah. Factually true, too. What is it that gets you to do that thing that you're afraid of? You have the discipline to just drive through it. Adequately to determine the best method of doing this requires an analysis of fear to be made. There are two aspects of fear. Fear can suddenly attack a man through his imagination. A corpse in a ditch or a grave by the side of the road will remind him of the peril of his position. He will suddenly realize that he himself is liable to be killed. It is a function of discipline to fortify the mind so so that it becomes reconciled to unpleasant sights and accepts them as normal everyday occurrences. Fear can also creep in upon a man during periods of monotony in the line. So this is the other type of fear. There's two types, right? The one that just jumps on you, and the other one is creeps on you. At such a time, he will have the opportunity to appreciate the dangers which beset his life. Fear, acting through his thoughts, can so reduce a man's hard core of courage that he will become nervous and fearful. Discipline strengthens the mind so that it becomes impervious to the corroding influence of fear. It teaches men to confine their thoughts within certain definite limits. It instills the habit of self-control. Keep your emotions in check. Keep your fear in check. That requires discipline. The basis of fear is the awareness of danger. In itself, this is healthy. For a man who is aware of danger automatically takes steps to provide against it. It is only when fear dominates the mind that it becomes unhealthy and leads to panic. So fear is good. We know that. Fear is healthy. We know that. Until you let it dominate your mind. And then it's a problem. Men must be urged to fight fear with courage so that they will advance or defend and not take refuge in flight or inaction. Man becomes aware of when man becomes aware of danger when he feels himself opposed to something more powerful than himself. Right?
Sure.
Man becomes aware of danger when he feels himself opposed to something more powerful than himself. In other words, when he feels that his own armament is unequal to that of the enemy who oppose him. It is important for a man to lose his individual feeling and to become an integral part of the battalion, division, and army to which he belongs. The larger the unit of which he feels himself to be a member, the larger will be the estimation of his own armament, and the less will be his fear. It is here that discipline shows its value, for it can help a man to lose his own identity and become a part of a larger, stronger unit. It is in this way that discipline will conquer fear. Got to relate to that bigger group.
Yeah.
You see this in like gang fights. The one person by themselves is a coward, but then when they have 10 of their friends, all of a sudden they're courageous. It's a horrible example, but it's a reality, right?
Yeah.
It's a total reality.
Yeah.
I used to see that in the streets.
Sure, the streets.
Back in the day. Like, yeah, you know, like one person, myself included.
Yeah.
You know, you're 2 or 3 of us. Okay, we're a little bit, we got a little froggy, right? But when there's 18 of us, all of a sudden you're real tough, right? Invincible. That's me when I was 15 years old. Yeah. Oh, I'm super tough with all my friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
It's a bad example, but it's the reality.
Yeah, I liked it.
Big scraps. This corporate sense, which discipline creates, helps men face the unknown. At night, men in the line become afraid of the unknown which stretches out in front of them. At all times in action, they are afraid of new and terrifying weapons which may be used against them. They realize that these unknown quantities may bring danger to them. Their ability to face these dangers is immensely strengthened by feeling themselves to be part of a group. The group is known, and a certain quantity which they feel is strong enough to stand up to the unknown dangers which surround them. Strength in numbers. The method by which the conquest of fear is achieved is the unifying of men into a group or unit under obedience to orders. See, he rolls right back to obedience to orders. Monty does. And part of the reason is he's talking about conscripts a lot. Draftees, not volunteers. So there's a little bit of a, that's what he's dealing with. Now, as we know from Hack and from General Mukayama, like, hey, if you treat your people right, it doesn't matter that they're draftees. Men require to be united if they are to give of their best. Discipline seeks to instill into all ranks a sense of unity by compelling them to obey orders as one man. This obedience to orders is the indispensable condition of good discipline. Men learn to gain confidence and encouragement from doing the same thing as their fellows. They derive strength and satisfaction from their company. Their own identities become merged into the larger, stronger identity of the unit. You know what's interesting? Is I'll even go a little bit more hardcore against Monty. You know what to me is an exceptional unit is the unit where you don't even have to give orders, where everyone knows what the intent is, or you give them like, hey, this is the intent, and people just do what they're supposed to do with no orders.
Yeah.
That's what you really want. You know, there's a chapter that Leif wrote where he's talking about prioritize and execute, and he's talking about how it's when one of our guys fell through the roof. They were on a mission. They were in Overwatch. They ended up having to sledgehammer through a concrete wall. And Leif and I were talking about, he's like writing the chapter, and he was going to talk about like what his priorities were and how he told the guys, like, you know, you do this. And he's like, yeah, well, the thing is I didn't tell anyone to do anything. And I was like, yeah, check. Because his guys knew, oh, wait, we got this going on. We're going to set security. We're going to move. Like everyone knows that's what you want. And then what that allowed Leif to do is like think about, okay, now bigger priorities. And that's what he wrote about. But your troops, you shouldn't even have to give them orders because they should be trained well enough to respond based on the situation and knowing and understanding the standard operating procedures and knowing very quickly what it is that your intent is as the leader. So all you need to say is set security. And the guys get into position where they're supposed to go. That's how it should be. I'm not looking for obedience. You know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for what we used to call thinking shooters. You know, I want a platoon full of thinking shooters, meaning that they're thinking for themselves. They're making things happen. They understand what it is that I want done, whether I said it to them or whether we pre-briefed it or whether we've been through this, we've drilled it, but whatever, they know what it is that I want done, and I want my team to be thinking. This is decentralized command. When you get into just rote obedience, we're losing the aspect of decentralized command. And as Monty said earlier, believe it or not, your men might be able to make some decisions on their own. It's like, yes, take that many steps further than that. Check. Continuing on, men must learn to obey orders when all their instincts cry out for them not to be obeyed. They must learn to obey orders in times of stress so that they will do so in times of danger. They must learn to carry out their tasks under any condition and despite all difficulties. In this way, the mass of loose individuals with their fears and weaknesses can be welded together into a united whole, ready to act on the word of the leader. So, again, what I'm saying is I don't want them ready to act on the word of the leader. I want them ready to act on the thought of the leader. Discipline helps men to display fortitude in the face of fatigue and discomfort, while at the same time it helps them conquer fear. It enables them uncomplainingly to triumph over difficulties which would have overcome them in times of peace. This constancy in enduring hardship and fatigue is the quality which is most frequently required of a soldier. Individual fortitude and corporate courage are the twin products of discipline. So there we get. That's the just straight positive aspects of discipline that I think of. Hey, we're gonna be tired, whatever. Discomfort, whatever. Fear, whatever. We have discipline. Discipline conquers all those things. Discipline implies a conception of duty. Nothing will be accomplished in the crisis by man without a sense of duty. The sentry in an outpost holds his ground in the face of an attack because he has a sense of duty to those behind him. This sense is instilled by discipline because it teaches men to obey orders as a matter of course, to know that it is wrong not to obey them, and right that it is their duty to do so. For the soldier, this conception of duty does not embrace abstractions such as freedom or empire or democracy. In battle, a soldier's sense of duty extends only to the friends who are around him. It is the job of the junior leader to encourage this sense of duty. Abstractions are the sphere of a politician. So he goes real extreme in this one. And we all have heard this before. Hey, when you're in combat, you're not fighting for this political ideology. You're fighting for the man to your left and to your right. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I would say, well, I know that it's not just that. You have to, when the immediate battle's over, you need to look and say, okay, well, why are we doing this? Oh, we're doing this because we believe in our cause. So to me, it's both. You can't just cast out, in my opinion, abstractions are the sphere of politicians. No, troops need to believe in what they're doing. A certain type of training may induce men to go forward in an attack simply out of fear of the consequences of not doing so. This applies only to the weakest and most feeble of men who are of little value in battle. This type of training is an essential part of discipline, but is never to be mistaken for the whole. So he kind of goes one way and then the other. It's like, yeah, sometimes you're just going to have to make people do what you want to do because they're afraid of you or they're afraid of the consequences. If you have to lead through fear, if your team is doing something only because they're afraid of the consequences, that's a losing battle. It's a losing war, right? You might win the battle, but you're not going to win the war. Continuing on, the type of training mentioned in the preceding paragraph, which implies a certain harshness and hardness, has its value. Material comforts are now so insidious that there is some danger that this is the old-fashioned idea of discipline, and it will be allowed to disappear. This must not happen. Soldiers will not win battles if their training has not been hard. That's a little lesson for your entire life.
Yeah.
Soldiers will not win battles if their training has not been hard. The softening influences of civilian life must be replaced by the exacting demands of military training. Soldiers must forget the pleasures of peace and concentrate on the realities of war. Isn't it funny that this could be written right now and somebody's like, oh, training is getting easier and all that. It's like we always think that. Got to keep it hard. Yeah. You always got to fight against the slippery slope of things getting easier. In brief, discipline seeks to conquer fear by welding men into a cohesive whole, united by obedience to orders. No, I'm not with you, Monty. It aims to create a body strong enough to carry each of its members through dangers and difficulties which they themselves would be unable to face alone. In this way, it promotes comradeship, which is the third factor of morale. Okay? I much more important, in my opinion, than the blind obedience of orders. Morale, so we're talking about comradeship now. Morale cannot be good unless men come to have affection for each other. A fellow feeling must grow up, which will result in a spirit of comradeship. An army is made up of human beings, so that however much a leader may inspire his men, however perfect the discipline, morale will be hard and unsympathetic if the warmth of comradeship is not added to it. War, though a hard business, is not necessarily a grim one. Men must laugh and joke together, must enjoy each other's company, and must get fun out of life even in times of danger. Check. The spirit of comradeship must begin at the section or tank crew level and work its way upward to army level. The importance of encouraging men to band together and identify themselves with their units has already been emphasized. This will be necessary to make considerable efforts to further this spirit of comradeship. Junior commanders must plan to create this spirit in the same way they plan to train their men and fire their weapons. Men must not be moved from unit to unit or even from platoon to platoon unless there's good reason for doing it. And these reasons must be made clear to the men. A man who has served among friends in the same platoon for a long time will be helped by them to face the trials of battle. He will feel around him his reserves of courage and purpose upon which he can draw. There will be a feeling of solidarity, and out of this feeling there will grow up a determination to advance together and defend together and even die together. In wartime, with such heavy casualties and constant reinforcements, it is always found that this comradeship can be built up most quickly by ensuring that new arrivals as reinforcements belong to the part of Britain from which the unit is originally drawn and to which it belongs in peacetime. So that's what you got to have your team joined together. And then he's saying, look, if you've got new reinforcements coming in and they came from Derbyshire, and there's a unit from Derbyshire, send them to go work with the guys from Derbyshire. They already have a connection. Mm-hmm. Comradeship is, and you know who didn't do that? The Soviets. The Soviet Union was famous for not doing that because they didn't want there to be a really strong unity in the forces, because then that unity might turn into, a movement.
Yeah.
So they didn't want that. They would notoriously split everyone up. You would never be with a guy from your hometown. They'd split everyone up. This is the opposite of that. Comradeship is based on affection and trust, which between them produce an atmosphere of mutual goodwill and feeling of interdependence. Men learn to have faith in each other and to depend on each other according to the abilities of each. In a tank crew, gun team, or infantry section, men do not work well together merely because they are disciplined and well led. They do so because they trust each other and because they are bound together by an affection which is never expressed in words but shown itself in deeds. Comradeship is a great antidote to fear because it gives a man friends. A man must make friends in his platoon, friends whom he respects and admires. In battle, these friends will prevent him from feeling lonely. A man alone is a man who will find it hard to stand up to the dangers of the line. A man alone is a man afraid. If he has friends, he will derive strength from their presence, and he will be anxious not to let them down in battle. He will seek to do his fair share of all tasks which come to his crew or section. He will feel ashamed if he cannot assist his friends in their duties and maintain his place with them in the line. All men have within them a touch of streak of generosity and unselfishness, a touch of nobility, and these qualities will be brought out in the attitude to their friends. Friendship causes men to give their best. So, I guess we started talking about this a little bit in the beginning. If you don't want to be a part of the team, you are going to miss this whole section of what makes a unit have high morale. If we're not friends, that hurts our morale. So, they have these things, and the Rangers do a really good job of it. You can peer someone out. Meaning we as peers can look at someone that we don't like or that doesn't want to be a part of the team, and we can get rid of them. So it's called peering someone out. We don't really, there's not an official system. In the SEAL teams, like, you can do it, but it's like it's a little bit case by case. So in Ranger school, and forgive me, Rangers, if I don't get this 100% right, but basically you have to rank everyone in your patrol. So you got 20 guys in your patrol. You rank this guy was number 1, meaning performance-wise. This guy was number 1. This guy was number 20. If you're number 20 like multiple times in a row, 3 times in a row or something, they kick you out. So what we have to do is we have to work together as a team and say, okay, you know what? It's my turn to be the last guy. So put me as number 20. Okay, Jocko, everyone's put you as 20. Okay, cool. Next time it's going to be Echo. Next time it's going to be Bill. Next time it's going to be Mike. So that way, if we all want to stay, what we have to do is we have to coordinate, work together to rank ourselves accordingly. So it's real easy. If none of us like Echo, it's real easy just to put Echo at the bottom, 3 patrols in a row, and you're gone. In the basic SEAL training, we don't really have a system like that. It takes a little bit more, you have to be a little bit more proactive because it's not just an existing thing. We did have, in my SEAL training class, we had one guy that we basically peered out. Like, my officers, got feedback from everyone and said, this guy shouldn't be here. And they went up to the instructors, and the instructors got rid of him. So it happens, but it doesn't happen in quite that official way. And the only reason, it wasn't performance. It was like, hey, this guy doesn't, for lack of a better word, and this doesn't sound real good in this politically correct world that we live in now, you get someone that doesn't fit in. Right? Like, this guy just doesn't fit in. Cool, we're going to get rid of him. Because we don't want to have someone on the team that doesn't want to be part of the team. And believe me, this happens very seldom. Like, you got to be a real,
right.
You got to fit in a real big, not fit in a real big way to stand out with a crowd of SEALs. There's all kinds of different guys. So,
I heard, I don't know, it seems like anyway that you could do that like within a roommate situation. It'd be less official. Like, you're talking about a system, that it's sort of official. Like you said, hey,
in the Rangers, it's official.
Yeah, like you say, hey, let's just. Wait, what's the ranking based on the Ranger thing?
Well, they're saying, hey, Echo did a great job on this patrol. I rank him as the number 1 guy on this patrol. Jocko was number 16, so he's number 16. And Bill was horrible, and he's number 20. Right. But you do that every patrol you go on.
So wait, so let's say that we weren't gonna phase anybody out or
So
peer anyone out.
Then what we would do is we would just rotate. Hey, I'm the bottom guy this time. Okay, Echo's
But
the
you
bottom.
wouldn't really perform at the bottom necessarily.
No.
Oh, just on the
On the record, you have to force rank everyone.
Okay.
And so you rank. Hey, we're just going to rotate who's the bottom one, so none of us get eliminated.
Gotcha. And then it's weird. I thought what you meant by peer someone out, which kind of might even be the same thing in a way, where let's say you have 3 roommates, or let's say 4 roommates,
okay,
right? And they're like, hey, like this guy's not fitting in. He's I don't know, he's snores or I don't know, whatever. And you know how roommates were friends typically, right?
Yeah.
When you room with someone, and then after a while, you just sort of like not invite that one friend all the time.
You sort of peer them out.
Like just in more than anything, I mean, in a nutshell, basically you just make his experience with the group just a little less enjoyable.
Yeah.
So he's sort of on his own, just sort of phase himself out.
He's gonna find some new friends.
Yeah, just slowly, just naturally kind of thing.
Then eventually you're just like, hey, bro, we're peering you out.
You don't tell him. You don't tell him. I mean, I guess you could when you break up with your friend, you ever had to do that? Where you be like,
I'm a dude.
No.
Not breaking up with people.
It's an expression.
Males.
No, it's an expression like where, you know how you ever had a friend who's like, they want to be your friend and everything, but man, being friends with this person is just kind of too much. You ever had that?
First of all, I don't have a lot of people that want to be friends with me, and I don't have a lot of long list anyways, so I really haven't had that happen.
Right. Like, I don't know, like if your friend, every time you go somewhere with him, he gets in like arguments with people or gets in fights or like, I don't know, the kind of guy he's just too much to be a friend with, and you got to break up with him, or he just calls you too much. Bro, leave me alone. Like that kind of friend. Anyway, sometimes you got to do that.
I don't have a lot of, this is making me feel real lonely over here. I don't have anyone that does any of this.
Maybe you're the one who got phased out.
I got phased out big time. I got peered out across the board over the past 47 years. Phased out.
Could be, right? You're too intense. You're too intense with your 4:30
let's not invite
wake-ups.
Jocko. He's going to be all fired up for this.
Yeah, we can't drink around him. Because that's weird how people think they can't drink around you.
Maybe some people do, but no, I'm pretty mellow about it. You know, I'm not trying to get peered out over here.
Oh, you're too late already, Brad. You're peered out.
But there's some people I think feel internally guilty, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they don't want me around because they know, like, oh, well, I want to do horrible things tonight to my body, right? Yeah. And if I have Jocko here, I'm going to feel guilty about it.
Yeah. And I might be judged, or that's what it is. I think they think
always
you judge.
Judging.
Yeah.
Always judging. It's funny because I'm saying that sarcastically. I kind of really don't care.
Yeah. I don't think you've even indicated that you cared. Like, not even in a little way. It's funny.
Yeah. And actually, I think I don't like to indicate, because then the person might tighten their track up a little bit. Then they're going to be like tougher to deal with on the mats of justice.
Yeah. All right. See, so it's the whole plan.
I'm bringing donuts, bro.
Yeah. Have some of these. Pre-workout donuts.
So yes, I think it's a good system that the Rangers have, and like I said, we have an unofficial methodology, and certainly once you get it to a SEAL team, there's the same thing can happen, right? You get a guy that just doesn't quote unquote fit in, and that's a real thing. And like I said, it's a real broad spectrum. Like, there's very few people that I know or that I saw got peered out. I think we might have peered out one guy in like my second or third platoon. We actually had a guy that was just like, you really just don't belong here. And, the idea was like, hey, we need to. And what'll happen is the dude will probably get some safety violations, which is, by the way, what one of the reasons why a guy's going to get peered out. Like, hey, this guy just can't keep it together in the house. You know what I mean? That's not good. We don't want him here. So, yeah, you don't want because, and I think it's because, and it's not like anyone says, well, comradeship is a real important part of morale, and morale is very important on the battlefield. We never said that, but you feel it in a platoon. You got some guy that just doesn't fit in.
Yeah, I can see how that could be, especially with you guys in the teams where it matters. It matters like way more. It's not like you're, in my case, as a mover, you go in little crews, and it's like, it's just way less at stake, being like a cohesive team.
There seems to be a bit less at stake.
A little bit different. But yeah, so it makes sense, man. Totally does.
Yeah, and again, I don't want people freaking out, but I will say this. What was it? I was going to college, and I was out of the SEAL teams for a little while, and one of my professors was, like, well, it must be so nice to just be going to college. And I'm like, no, it's hell. I want to go back to the teams immediately right now, like this minute. Because in this professor's mind, she's thinking, oh gosh, think of how wonderful this must be to be here and being educated and learning and expanding your brain. And you don't have to do all that work. Military stuff with guns. And meanwhile, I'm literally the exact opposite. I don't want to do anything at college, and I want to go back to the teams immediately. And I said, no, I if I could go back right now, I would immediately give me an F in every class. If they let me go back and still be in the teams, I'd do it. Mm-hmm. And she goes, well, what is it you like so much about it? And I said, well, everyone's kind of like me. Yeah. You're hanging around with a bunch of guys that are kind of like you. Not exact, but like they have the same mindset. They laugh at the same jokes. They have that it's like just a bunch of similar type of people. Of course, that's who you want to hang around with. You don't want to hang around with a bunch of people that are the opposite of you. Now, you're not hanging around with like, hey, this person's nothing, or this person's different than me. I don't want to hear their input. No, I like getting different people's input, but there's a nice kind of solid base of like, hey, you're a team guy, I'm a team guy, and we kind of have the same kind of just broad life perspective. Yeah. And that's nice to have. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter where you came from, because in the teams you get all kinds of people from all kinds of different backgrounds, right? You get guys from Hawaii, you get guys from the ghetto, you get guys from the farm, you get guys from the city, you get guys from everywhere. Mm-hmm. And yet all those differences are like surface differences, but the core dude is pretty much like this dude. You know what I mean? Like we're all pretty similar. Doesn't matter what, kind of how you grew up or what race you are or what religion you are. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you're always a team guy, so we kind of get it. I know what you're thinking. Yeah. And you know what I'm thinking. And that's kind of cool to be around. And that is part of comradeship, and that is part of what makes a unit tight. Mm-hmm. And when there's a person that doesn't, then that's problematic. And it's not just problematic, it's problematic for the team. Yeah. It starts to hurt morale.
Yeah, it's weird and not weird, but in football it's the same thing. But it's not the whole team though. Mm-hmm. People gather in positions. Mm-hmm. Like the wide receiver in my case, all the wide receivers, same deal. They all come from different places. Hawaii guys, mainland guys, different part, just such different people. Yep. But for some reason, they all just sort of gravitate towards each other. When you go to the cafeteria or wherever you go, like in football camp, you can tell a lot by where people sit.
There's
in
the quarterbacks.
Yeah, the quarterbacks all sit over there.
There's the linebackers.
And it's so interesting given this concept that you're talking about, where you would think most of the people from a certain area, maybe a certain race, would gather together. And there is some of that for sure, yeah. But for the most part, it sorts itself out by position.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like you see, sort of the linemen kind of go over there, and the receivers are kind of like over here. Yeah, and it doesn't matter like where they come from or their little background or whatever, because there's this underlying interest that they all sort of share.
There's a core part of their personality that's the same, and that's I guess the thing here. Got that core part of your personality that's the same, and some fundamental characteristics of the good team guy. There's a fundamental, like, hey, this guy's gonna work hard. Hey, this guy's gonna take care of his gear. He's gonna take care of the platoon gear. He's not looking out for himself. It's a real problem. Like if you're you don't want to be that guy. And so if you have those, then it doesn't really matter what you're like. Whatever you layer on top of that, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. No one cares.
It's part of the game.
No one cares. Yeah. Check. Next section, the fourth factor, self-respect. No man can be said to possess high morale if the quality of self-respect is lacking. Soldiers must be encouraged to respect themselves at all times under all conditions. This quality is involved with those of discipline and comradeship to such an extent that it is perhaps wrong and certainly difficult to separate them. But no man will have high morale who does not possess a quality greater and wider than comradeship and discipline. Self-respect implies a determination to maintain personal standards of behavior. A man who respects himself will neither allow himself to become slovenly nor his quarters dirty. Right? This is the root of, the stereotypical adult saying to the kid, don't you have any self-respect, right? Yeah. How could you walk around looking like that? How could you wear that? How could you grow your hair like that? How could you, like all those things? How could you live in this pigsty, right? It's all those things boil down to self-respect. Even in action, he will take care to see that his personal appearance suffers as little as possible. Monty's a bit of a fashionista, I think, representing that beret. That's Monty. It is the job of the NCO to maintain this aspect of discipline. It is the function of the officer to encourage and instill self-respect. So once again, who's instilling self-respect? It's the leaders. And how do they do that? It's the little things that we just talked about. I believe you instill self-respect by doing things you just talked about, which is giving people responsibility, letting them figure out jobs themselves, letting them do things. Here's how Monty wants to do it. The officer must ruthlessly insist on maintenance of personal standards. And then he says this is why you got to, Monty's coming off hard, but here we go. At the same time, however, he must let his men understand that he appreciates and respects them as human beings. Soldiers must be treated with humanity and controlled by discipline. So there's a balance in his dichotomy here, right? Treat them good, but control them by discipline, but treat them good. So he's got a dichotomy here. If the officer does this, he will gain the respect of his men, and at the same time, he gives them self-respect. Efficiency is inseparable from self-respect. The sense of a good job well done, of a hard task successfully accomplished, is indispensable to good morale. Men must take pride in their ability to carry out all jobs allotted to them. They must feel that they are good soldiers and therefore of value to other people. That's a good little thing to sprinkle in, especially kids, right?
Yeah.
Like have you ever been around kids that have been told, that they're worthless their whole lives?
Yeah.
Like it's a horrible sight. And what do they not have? They don't have self-respect. Mm. Men can be persuaded of this fact by being trusted. A man who feels he is trusted will feel that he's efficient and he will at once begin to respect himself. This is critical. Leaders, subordinates, kids, either one. When you start giving them that trust, like your daughter's not old enough, but eventually you're going to be saying, hey, you're going to stay at home. I'm going to be gone for about a half an hour. I'm going to the store, right? And she's going to stand up a little straighter. Yeah. Because it's all of a sudden that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal. Yeah. And that same thing happens with your subordinates. Hey, listen, I'm going to be gone for a little bit. Hold down the fort. Yeah. You got this. Mm-hmm. They stand up a little bit straighter. Their self-respect increases when you give them trust. A man who feels he's entrusted will feel that he is efficient, and he will at once begin to respect himself. He will have confidence in his own ability to fight. Men who are trusted gain self-confidence. It is the job of the officer to convince his men that he trusts them. So once again, it's a leadership scenario.
That's so true. I remember learning to drive with my dad.
That's a big one.
Oh yeah. So he taught we learned on a manual transmission. Are there any manual transmissions nowadays?
Rare.
Yeah, hardly, huh? And it was a truck too, which is it's just harder. In my experience, the one that we learned on wasn't that easy to get, and so we learned how to just do it. Just use the manual transmission first, second, third, fourth, and but still not necessarily driving on the streets. So the first time he told me to drive on the streets, I knew how to do the shift and all that. He just jumped in the passenger seat and he put me, and he just said, take us there. Yeah. And we were going to, we're at the store or whatever. And he was just take us there. It wasn't the kind okay, now what you want to do is do all, it was nothing. He just said straight up, take us there. And I felt that. I felt that hey, I'm the driver now, and I went, and a little bit nerve wracking, but man, way more confident than I would have been if he would have been okay, be sure to check your mirrors.
Here's the deal.
Check your mirrors.
Yeah.
Okay, easy, that kind of stuff. None of that. He just said, take us there.
Yeah.
Boom, I took us there. It was good.
BC.
I liked it. Yep.
Running
Dropping knowledge even back then.
Check. Self-respect is a quality which will develop inevitably if the three essential factors already considered are present. It is true to say that without self-respect, good morale is impossible. It is equally true to say that if the standards of leadership, discipline, and comradeship are high, the quality of self-respect will also be high. So this all boils down to leadership. Additional factor, devotion to a cause. It is impossible to make devotion to a cause either a basic or contributory factor to good morale. It must stand by itself between these two categories. It is important to clear the mind of some misconceptions connected with the influence of a cause in shaping morale. Men do not fight primarily for a cause. They do not advance over dangerous ground in pursuit of an ideal. They do not now fight as crusaders may have done long ago. They fight because they are ordered to do so. And they do it well or badly according to the strength of various factors which have already been considered. So, yeah, this is one that I'm not really down with Monty on this thing. I think if you've got troops that have no idea why they're fighting and they're not fighting for a cause, you're going to have a breakdown. You're going to have a breakdown in your units. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, he kind of said that. He said it earlier. He said if you don't have respect for the plan and the higher leadership, well, that's what a cause is. A cause is like we have a plan. Mm-hmm. We have our higher leadership. Who's that? That's the leaders of our country. That's the highest leadership. Mm-hmm. So if you don't believe in that, then you're going to have a problem. And then he says this, and this is a little arrogance coming from Monty. This is not so in the case of leaders. Some fight for the same reason as the men, the more intelligent, because they at heart believe in what they fight for. Such leaders are usually the best in the army and wield the greatest influence. Thus, numerically, cause is of little importance, but it is a powerful factor because the leaders are greatly influenced by it. So he's basically saying, listen, the senior leaders have an understanding of the cause, and so whereas the men are just fighting because they're ordered to. He literally says that. Like, come on, bro. That doesn't work. That doesn't work in America. And you talk like look at that letter I read from the beginning. That's kind of why I wanted to read that letter as a contradiction to this, and what he says in that letter is like, look, I'm not fighting for the great of England. He says that, but he's fighting for the cause. The cause is security for his family, right? So people are thinking about that. You don't say I'm willing to die just because some random dude ordered me to do it. No, you have to have a connection to something greater than that. Otherwise, you're suicidal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, remember Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
When he said that
There's a movie, yes.
Yeah, he's Tom Hanks, right? He was like, I don't know who Ryan is. They got to save Private Ryan, obviously. And they're at this part where they're kind of questioning things. Guys, morale is breaking down. Mm-hmm. And, things happen. And what he says in part of his speech was like, hey, I don't know who Private Ryan is. I don't know him. So I basically questioning that particular cause. But he said, but if going and rescuing him earns me the right to get back to my family, then that's my mission. Mm-hmm. So same deal. Same deal as the letter right there.
He had a cause.
He had his cause. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that was the one he was fighting for.
Yeah. Back to the book. Nevertheless, nothing which has been stated here must be interpreted as minimizing the influence of cause on those officers and men who are moved by it. So then he brings it back a little bit. For these few, cause will be a sustaining and strengthening factor and may be of greater importance to them than any of the other four factors. There are times when a few men will be gripped by a cause and will perform astonishing deeds of heroism to further it. Such men do not require the ordinary bonds of discipline which unite and strengthen others. Their devotion to the cause is in itself all sufficient. Nor do they require the same kind of leader that has been described. They themselves will all be leaders. Such men may be properly described as guerrilla or irregular fighters, fanatically devoted to a political, religious, or national ideal. They must not be confused with conscript soldiers to whom this paper applies. So there you go. I mean, in America, we have all volunteer.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, even it doesn't matter. If you've got it, people have to understand there has to be some kind of a deeper cause as to what you're doing, or else you're going to have real problems. Yeah. Sure, you can order people if they're conscripts, and you can punish them if they don't do what you're going to tell. If they don't do what you tell them to do, you can punish them. That is a way, but that is not going to be a successful way. That is not going to be the ideal way.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're not using the ideal way, you may win. But if you're going against somebody that is using the ideal way, that has a cause that they believe in, and on top of that cause, they have all these other things, the group that has a real cause will win every single time.
Yeah.
Now, there's some other contributory factors that he brings up here. One is success. This is a real obvious one. Success. High morale is possible in defeat, but not during a long period of defeat. On such occasions, confidence in leaders will inevitably wane, and the first basis will be undermined. Success will aid good morale by creating confidence in the leader and in the command. This factor requires no enlargement. Next one is regimental tradition. The regimental spirit can be a powerful factor in making for a good morale. The more a soldier feels himself to be identified with his regiment, the higher will be his morale if the four essential conditions have been fulfilled. It must be realized, however, that not only that there can be a good morale without strong regimental feelings, but that regiments with great tradition do not necessarily always produce good battalions. So the tradition, which there's some units that have awesome traditions, and being with some of those units overseas. I mean, the first of the 506 obviously comes to light, and their tradition, the 101st Airborne tradition, was so thick. That pride was in every soldier that wore that ace of spades, that spade on their gear. It was like, yeah, there's pride there, there's tradition, but he's saying it's not going to replace these other things, but it is a factor that you can use. Another factor, again, contributory factor, personal happiness. A man should be happy in the sense that his personal life should be in order. Nothing weakens a man more than trouble at home. It encourages him to think of home and all that it implies, when he should be occupied with the enemy. It turns his mind to peace and his desire to live at the moment when it is necessary for him to steel himself to face the possibility of death. He must never be allowed to forget that it is his job to fight. The function is to kill the enemy, and in doing so, he must expose himself to danger. Anything which weakens his will to fight and expose himself must be considered to lower his morale. A soldier is only a family man after he is a soldier. He must look forward at the enemy and not back towards home. Some realism to that. Definitely, I think it can go either way. I think there's times where people can be driven to success by their family back home and by thinking of their family, but it can definitely become a distraction.
Yeah, it
depending
seems
on
like
the situation.
Yeah, it seems like when there's a lot of risk involved, it'll be a distraction.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the individual. I think it depends on the circumstances.
Yeah.
I think what may be better to look whether it's a distraction or not is like what's going on at home. That's what's more important.
Yeah.
If there's disruption at home, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? If you got a guy that's overseas and there's problems in the family life, that's going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird cuz like guys at work sometimes anyway. Sometimes something bad can be going on at home, and they'll use work to sort of cover it up, like blank in their mind, you know, they'll be like, hey, that, like, there's, again, sorry for another movie reference, but there's this movie called True Lies, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I've seen that movie.
He goes, yeah, so Arnold.
I haven't seen it enough times. It came out 20 years ago to be pulling a quote from it and a storyline, but hey, let's go with it.
It's kind of beside the point of this one, but he goes, you know, Arnold finds out that his wife is, or thinks that his wife's cheating on him with the guy. And then the partner, Tom Arnold, goes, he's all, let's just focus on work. That's what I always do when my life turns to dog shit. I just focus on work, you know? Well, but, and the point is, like, some people, that's how, you know, something's going wrong at home. They'll be like, you know, I'm just focused on work. Screw that. Forget about it. You know, I'm immerse myself in this other thing. Yeah, because it's nice because you can control work. Yeah. Whereas you might not be able to control your relationship the way you think you should be able to. Yeah. So, continuing on, all soldiers do not have morale affected by home troubles. Some men thrive on unhappiness and fight all the more fiercely because they hold a secret bitterness within them. Such men are the minority. That's the person you just talked about, right? Yeah. Hey, I'm just going to go work harder. But such men are the minority, but they are a large minority. They are a reminder that happiness cannot by itself produce good morale. Next is administration. A man's ordinary day-to-day life must be well organized. Thus, hard conditions imposed on him in training to inculcate discipline do not rule out the desirability of good living quarters. And in the line, a soldier's morale will be much improved if the administrative arrangements are good and if he is assured of proper conditions with a reasonable amount of leisure and comfort when he leaves the front. Leisure day. Where you at? Where you at, Theo Vaughn? And then he says this, but here a warning must be given. There is a danger today of welfare being considered as an end in itself and not as a means to an end, one of the means of maintaining morale. Welfare by itself will not produce good morale because it is essentially soft. And it has already been stated that morale cannot be good unless it contains a quality of hardness. Whew. Man, you got to remember that, right? Yeah. You got to remember that. You're not ever going to have good morale unless there's like an element of hardness to it. And continuing on, hardship and privation are the school of the good soldier. Idleness and luxury are his enemies. Men will endure great hardships if they know why and are convinced of the necessity. Blood, toil, tears, and sweat is not for nothing one of the great rallying calls of the English race. Goring's cry, guns before butter, expressed the same truth. If men believe in the need, hardships are in themselves stimulant to morale. But the opposite is also true. Let there be any suggestion that butter can come before guns, and the men will at once choose butter. If this happens, there will be no morale in this sense of the definition. And then we get propaganda. The uplifting effect of modern propaganda on a soldier is perhaps a new development. A man's morale is raised immensely by the feeling that his efforts are appreciated and applauded not only by his comrades and his officers, but also the world at large. You gotta get that propaganda working for you. I've had a couple companies I've been working with lately, and one of them was being assaulted by its competitors. And it had a better product. Its product was doing well, but they were getting assaulted. And they were getting assaulted, by the way, with lies. Like the competitors are just making stuff up, right? Just making stuff up, putting that word out there, putting out their rumors unofficially. Sure. And, you know, here's the thing. The CEO was kind of, wasn't quite sure what to do. And I said, you have the most powerful tool in your arsenal. It's the truth. But you got to weaponize that truth. You got to weaponize it. You got to turn it into a weapon that you can use to crush the lies. Because if you're doing great things and you're not telling anyone, you're not putting out any propaganda, well, then guess what? No one's going to know about it. You just lost your most valuable weapon,
which is the truth. If you're doing good things and your product is better and you can prove that it's better and people know that it's better, but you're not telling anyone, it doesn't matter. You have to weaponize that truth and get it out there. Mm-hmm. So that's what propaganda is. Now we are moving into the conclusion right here. In brief, high morale has been defined as the quality which makes men endure and show courage in times of fatigue and danger. The cultivation of morale depends upon the training of leaders, the inculcation of discipline, the encouragement of comradeship, and the infusing of self-respect. The leaders must have a belief in their cause, and they must pay attention to numerous contributory factors of considerable but secondary importance. And here's how he closes it out. Man is still the first weapon of war. His training is the most important consideration in the fashioning of a fighting army. All modern science is directed toward his assistance, but on his efforts depend the outcome of the battle. The morale of the soldier is the most important single factor in war. So there he is saying it again. The morale of the soldier is the most important single factor in war. And as I said, I will argue with that. Because as far as I'm concerned, without question, leadership is the most important thing on the battlefield. And I'm actually, like I said, I'm thinking I'm right. So no offense to Monty, but I think I'm right because his factors, to review them, leadership, that's the number one factor. Well, that's leadership. Discipline, where does that come from? Discipline comes from leadership. Comradeship, where does that come from? It comes from good leadership. Self-respect, where does that come from? And this, I'm not saying that. That's what Monty's saying. Monty said that discipline comes from leadership. Monty said that comradeship comes from leadership. Monty said that self-respect comes from leadership. So as far as I'm concerned, no offense, Monty, as far as I'm concerned, leadership is the most important thing on the battlefield. But that being said, let there be no doubt that morale, without question, is a necessity and a requirement for victory. And I will add this. Morale is important, extremely important, not only for a team, not only for a military unit or a business or any kind of organization made up of people, but morale is also important for individuals. For us, day to day, how is your morale? Where's your morale at? Think about how you approach the day when your morale is good. Think about how you go into the day. Just like you're going into attack. If you're going to attack the enemy and your morale is high, you're going to attack with vigor and you're probably going to be successful. If you go in to attack the enemy and your morale is low, you're going to attack without vigor, without enthusiasm. And you're probably going to fail. Well, what about you as a person? If your morale is low, guess what? If you roll into the day, you roll into your mission, and your morale is low, likely you are going to fail. So then the question is, how do we increase our personal or individual morale? And I think it's the same way we improve team morale. We improve our personal morale with discipline, with hardship, and with privation, and with efficiency, and with emotional control, and by facing our fears. And of course, most important is leadership. Leadership, leading yourself and not allowing this leadership vacuum in your head. Right? When I was putting SEALs through training back in the day, if there was chaos broke out, there was some times where no leader would step up and take charge, and that would create a leadership vacuum. And it was hard to tell it was happening because no one would be saying anything. It would just be silence, and you didn't hear anything. And so it's hard to recognize that all of a sudden, wait a second, there's no one's leading. You don't recognize it because it's not happening. It's like seeing something that's not there. It's not there, so you don't think about it. Well, when no one's leading, sometimes it can be hard to notice that. And I'd call that a leadership vacuum, and I'd teach these young SEALs like, hey, when that happens, you need to step up. Well, the same thing can happen in your head. You get this leadership vacuum in your head. When you're not leading, you're going to start to slide down the path of least resistance. You're going to slip on down that slippery slope. You're going to walk away from discipline. You're going to not impose hardship and privation on yourself. You're not going to push yourself, and your morale is going to go down as well. And if your morale fails, well, it becomes very easy for you to fail. So don't allow that. Don't allow your morale to fail. Lift up your morale. Increase your morale by inflicting yourself with discipline. By doing hard things, by controlling your emotions, by controlling yourself, and by leading yourself on the path of discipline, which, as we know, leads to freedom. And I think that's actually all I've got for tonight. So, Echo Charles.
Yes.
Speaking of controlling ourselves and leading ourselves down the path, I know you've got some, let's say, some guideposts on the path, some markers on the path.
I do.
Some signals
Big time.
pointing in the right direction.
Huge time.
To get us down the path.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this today. I'm watching my daughter's performance, little singing performance.
Check.
That was this morning. All good. So for whatever reason, good, fine. It was good. It was a big group of
What
people.
grade?
Kindergarten.
No, what grade did you give her when she was done?
I didn't give a grade.
How's she going to know how she's going to improve her performance?
I'll give her a grade when she gets home.
Check. Okay, good. What you're going to give her for a grade?
But probably F for sure, because it's a long story.
Check.
That's beside the point, by the way.
Wow.
So
an F?
Probably
What'd she do?
Yeah, there were some things that happened post-performance.
What,
that
tears?
That I didn't approve of the reason for them happening.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about what happened.
Anyway, we'll go over that later. So the point is, I'm thinking, like, what is the path?
This is probably the first time I've ever wanted you to go into detail on a story.
It doesn't matter.
Did she freak out? Was she shy? Just give us a little debrief.
Okay, so she was, so she's shy. She was performing good, fine. Like, it's the whole class, though. At, like, what do you call it? An assembly.
Okay, yeah.
And
so we're talking 100 kids on stage. Or is it just one class and there's only 25 kids on stage?
One class.
25 or 30.
And it's not even really a stage. It's like
it's in the classroom.
In a courtyard kind of situation.
Cool. Check. So it's in a real official scenario.
Yeah. So they perform good. As far as performance goes, fine. She memorized the song. She performed it in front of us.
Yep.
The night before and the night before that.
Check.
All good.
Preparation.
But then they had to sit down. And then the assembly sort of went on.
Uh-huh.
So they're sitting down, and I look over and I see her crying, which I didn't. I was confused, but I know my daughter. Like, she's softy like that. My fault. I know.
Uh-huh.
So she's looking back on me. She's looking back to me all salty. And I'm like, I'm not concerned because I know something didn't go wrong. Right. Something's happening that she just doesn't like. Like, she's tired of sitting there or something like that. So she's looking back at me. I'm just like, I don't give it that much attention. Later on, I find out as she's walking to her class, because after assembly, they go to their class. And she's like, oh, yeah, I didn't like how long the assembly was going on.
That's what she
said to me. Yeah, that's why she was crying. That's why she gets an F. Yep. Well, and here's the thing. She shouldn't feel that strongly about it,
There's something else going on, to be honest with you, bro.
She's like a softie. She's like like when things don't go her way in certain ways, and she's uncomfortable or whatever.
So if I were you, I'd break it down like this. I wouldn't just give her an F across the board. Yeah. I would give her, I'd break out maybe some different categories. I'd give her an A for singing. Or maybe a B, you know what I mean? Because they're probably not hitting every note right. Maybe a B minus,
sure,
or whatever, and then give her, presence. This is how I used to grade my kids when they would do stuff like this. I'd give them presence, I'd give them attitude, I'd give them clarity, enunciation. Like, there's a bunch of things you can break it down.
Yeah.
And you don't want to give her 5 O's across the board, obviously, because she ain't no 5-0 performer. Not at age 6, don't exist.
Nope,
not
by
break
our
her down a little
standard,
bit, right?
No.
So, but then you say, listen, by the way, all your performance, which you have you got a 3.8 on, that's your average score, post-performance behavior, had to give you a zero.
Yep.
Tears.
Yep.
Weakness. Don't ever let these other kids know that you should be having the attitude, I could stand out here, I could sit out here all day in this assembly. Bring it. Check. All right.
Anyway,
so there you go.
So as this is unfolding.
Oh, there's more to the story. Okay.
Well, that wasn't the point at all. That was just the setting.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was just thinking, like, what is the path? Like, what is that? Mm-hmm. Is it just the stuff that Jocko does and now we do it? No, it's not that. Not at all, actually. No. Granted, some of the stuff you do, in my opinion, is essential, quintessential.
Yeah.
It's like ideal.
Right. Okay.
That's what I think. That's my opinion.
I'm trying. I'm missing by a lot. I'm coming in a solid 2.2 most categories.
Well, yeah, but that's just you being hard on the stand on the scale.
I don't know.
On yourself.
I don't know.
Put it this way: the path is something specific, but more than that, I just realized. Not realized, but more like consciously thought of what's not the path. That's important. So it's like, okay, if you're doing jiu-jitsu, are you not on the path? Not necessarily. You have to be doing or neglecting very specific things to not be on the path. Like if you don't care about what you're eating, like you're just like whatever sounds good tonight. That's the total standard in which you base your meals on. You're probably not on the path. That's a big indicator.
Well,
that's one of the factors.
It's an area where you need to tighten things up.
Yes.
Because we know you're not performing optimally if you're not eating correctly. Yeah. We know that.
So we'll just say that element is considered not on the path. Right?
Check.
So, and that's just one example of many. Like if you just straight up don't exercise at all.
Yeah.
And some people have active lifestyles in general and they don't consider it quote unquote exercise. I get it, but and that's different or whatever. But if you're like inactive, you're sedentary.
Yeah, that's bad.
That quality is not on the path.
True.
You see what I'm saying? So basically what is not on the path is if you have most of the elements of your life is not on the path. You'll know.
Also, there's also a really broad thing because even if you're trying, right? Mm-hmm. That's what the path is, right? The path is trying, right? The path is like, hey, I'm trying. Now, I guess that's a little bit strong because I could say I'm trying to work out, but I just didn't make it again today. So yeah, you know what? You're not on the path. Correct. That's a good point.
Yes.
But you don't have to be, doing the 9-hour workout with a 6-hour jiu-jitsu session afterwards. No, like, oh, you only had an hour. You only had 30 minutes to train today. Yeah. Cool. Got it done quick. I did it pretty quick where I did 20 minutes today. Yeah. That's what I got. I flew in late last night, woke up this morning. I had another call. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to hammer this thing out. Yeah. I had that window closing too. Yeah. The window is like, well, maybe I'll just put it off.
Yeah. It's real.
Maybe I'll just, no, you can't let the window close. That was a really good concept. We talked about the jiu-jitsu window.
Yes.
It happens with working out too, right?
Even though that's mostly self-imposed though.
It is mostly self-imposed for working out, but it does happen. If you have work to do, legitimate work to do, you have meetings, you have calls, and you're like, well, I took that one call, or I woke up this morning and, I got that call, and wait a second, I'm brushing my teeth, and wait a second, I'm just going to check my email. Oh, now the window, the window just shut. Now I'm going to have to work out later, which will never happen. Yeah. Don't let the window shut.
Yeah. Just jump through it, man.
Yep, jump through the window.
Jump in. But hey, man, and to recognize what the path isn't is just important as recognizing what the path is. Because if you're like, hey, are you trying to, like, I don't know, what do people say? Like, are you trying to improve yourself or whatever? Yeah. Most people will say yes.
Yeah, true.
They'll be like, oh yeah, look at all the things. But it's like, you kind of know, like it's different. You just sort of know. Yeah. Like if you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're sort of on the path with that alone. Maybe not fully, but that is a legitimate element. So when you do jiu-jitsu, if you're new or not new, whatever, you're going to need a gi.
Yep.
What gi are we getting? I think we all know Origin because they are the best gis. So how are they the best gis? Okay, so if you just put one on, you'll sort of know. But here's an indicator. Won't go too deep into it. But Coach Adam, the same coach in Way of the Warrior Kid, by the way. There's a real Coach Adam. So Coach Adam puts on his Rift gi inside out, top. the gi top inside out. I think he thought it was correct.
Yeah.
And that was indicative of just because it shows the stitching, when you have it on the inside, it shows the stitching. And I looked at it, I was like, dang, that looks kind of cool right there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Pete was saying he took the jeans, Origin jeans, which are now out, and he turned them. He said, hey, if you want to know what the quality of these jeans, he turned them inside out. And he's like, look at what they look like from the inside. So now you have Adam who sees he puts his gi on inside out because the quality is so high that you can't even tell.
He thought that was the correct way to do it.
That's
He
what
thought
we're
that
doing
was
at
what was cracking. Meanwhile, the logo is all backwards and stuff. So, he really should have known that. But, hey, to each their own, and it looked good either way.
So that's where we're at with Origin. We got clothing, including jeans, gis, T-shirts,
Jockers.
sweatshirts, other stuff, and then we got supplements as well.
Yeah, supplements are good. Joint Warfare, I think I'm talking to Greg Train, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of our main training partners, and he has an AC joint situation.
Yeah.
2 sides, by the way. And I'm telling him, if you put together the Joint Warfare with the Super Krill oil, disciplined every single day, that thing will heal straight up faster, measurably faster.
100%. Yeah.
Than just,
Look at my knee situation, which
man, I'm a believer now.
You're now a believer.
Yeah.
I'm increased my beliefs of my own personal kind of like Wolverine healing powers, which I've joked about before, even though I wasn't really joking. You joke about something, but you kind of mean it.
Yeah.
I feel real lucky, man. Real lucky because my knee was straight up.
Oh yeah.
Injured, and it's not healed yet, but dang if it hasn't progressed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not like, when you're like 18 years old, maybe a lighter weight person or something, it's like you tend to sort of heal faster.
Yeah.
Let's face it, you're old school. And you're not very small.
Old school or old?
Yeah, you're old school, right? And, what are you walking around at 230, 235? I mean, I'm just saying that's not an easy racket for the knees all the time.
Huh.
And meanwhile, you're just boom, 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 bouncing back that fast. That's saying a lot.
Yeah.
That's saying a big lot.
Joint Warfare, krill oil, get some of that. Also the Discipline and the Discipline Go. I had a scenario the other day. That's actually yesterday.
Sure.
Crazy flight situation, thunderstorms, rerouting, landing, buses, trains. It's ridiculous. Yep. Anyways, I'm going into an interview on 2 hours of sleep.
Oh, dang.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And this is just after, Peter Attia's telling me about all the horrible, like, cognitive problems that are going to give you caused.
Yeah.
And so, I took like 2 Discipline Go right when I woke up. I was like, all right, I got an interview and then I got there and I did a little bit of, playing around, or not playing around, but they're like prepping for the interview. Mm-hmm. And then I took like 3 more. So I took 5 Discipline Goes. Yeah. Rocked it. I went in and I was like, what? You got a question? No, let me tell you. So anyways, try that Discipline Go out if you need something to focus your cognitive skills.
Skills, for sure.
You can get some of that. Or you can get the Discipline Go. You can get the Discipline Powder.
Yeah.
Should we have just called that pre-jiu-jitsu powder?
Yeah, it's sorting itself out to be that.
Yeah, it kind of seems like something where you are going to jiu-jitsu, you're going to need cognitive skills, and you're going to need some physical skills, or some physical enhancements.
Sure.
So you just jump on a couple scoops of Discipline, maybe 3 if you need to.
Right, if you want to get nuts.
Yeah, thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's part of my everyday now. I'm pulling the Dave Burke every day.
Yeah. Yeah, look, there's one thing that's good about it. It doesn't have some crazy amount of caffeine in it.
Right.
You don't want to be all amped up on caffeine. When you take something, this stuff that makes me feel really good. Well, you just took a big hit of caffeine and you're going to get, what's that word? You're going to get a tolerance to it, and then it's not going to have the effect that you want. Discipline has like 15 milligrams of caffeine per scoop. That's not that much. So what you feel, when you feel like you're not really feeling, you're feeling the other ingredients in there.
Oh, yeah.
So don't fool yourself into getting all amped up on caffeine, or otherwise you might as well go do meth or cocaine.
Or just drink some coffee, whichever. I don't know with the meth, that's kind of off the whole
No, I'm just
game.
kidding. Children, don't do meth or cocaine. Don't do drugs, period. However, if you want to do something that gives you sort of a addiction, try some strawberry milk, which is now out for adults. It is absolutely delicious if you want some extra protein in your body so you can get bigger, stronger, faster,
better.
Yeah, true. Or if you just want dessert.
Yeah.
If you just want some dessert, have some strawberry milk or some peanut butter milk or some mint milk or some vanilla or dark chocolate. There you go.
And Jocko white tea. If you're into tea, or even if you're not into tea, really. I never was really into tea. I'm not, against it. But, it's one of those things. So the OG, original, Jocko white tea, pomegranate.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Not pomegranate chai.
No.
White tea. Jocko decides to make his own white tea with side effects. Deadlifting 8,000 pounds.
Yeah.
All right, I'll roll with it. It's actually pretty good. So, yeah, get that. It is available on Jocko store now, by the way, and Amazon. And, just go on the internet, basically, and get it. So, yeah, that's a good one. Speaking of Jocko store, Jocko does have a store. It's called Jocko Store, just like this is called Jocko Podcast. Called Jocko Store. So jockostore.com, that's where it is. Online store. This is where you can get rash guards for your jiu-jitsu to supplement your gis from Origin. Also t-shirts.
Or if you're doing no gi.
Correct.
You can wear a rash guard.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of what I meant.
Or if you're doing ring workouts, using your rings. If you're doing dips, if you're doing ring push-ups, if you're doing muscle-ups, what did Greg Train say? Like the outside of your arm? He was always got the medical terms for everything.
Right. Your radial.
Yeah, whatever. You'll get all like chafed up.
Yeah.
When you're doing a bunch of muscle ups or a bunch of ring dips or whatever. If you wear a rash guard, you won't.
Oh, Jocko going for comfort over here. Speaking of comfort, if you I got into riding bike a little bit. Not totally, but if you wear a rash guard riding bike, like cycling, it's like surprisingly. I'm going to say it's surprisingly comfortable. Functional. It's functional. So, there's a lot of other things we do with our rash guards. And actually, I forgot to say this. We forgot to say this for a while. It does add another 19% performance in literally everything you do. Literally.
Yeah.
Also,
scientifically proven.
Yep, 100%. Also, T-shirts, if you want to represent discipline equals freedom, good, any of the layers that we've come to exploit. Is that the correct terminology?
Maybe.
Exploit the layers. Anyway.
Explore the layers.
Explore, for sure. That
sometimes
too.
you exploit the layers, which, is questionable behavior.
Yes,
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Wherever you subscribe to podcasts. I wouldn't think that you would listen to this whole podcast and not subscribe to it, but maybe you did. Don't do that. Subscribe to it. And then leave a review so I can read your funny review about getting after it and whatnot.
You also Warrior Kid podcast. Speaking of subscribing, so that's not just for the kids. That's for everybody. If you want just straight up simple answers to your questions that your kids happen to beat you to the punch in asking. My daughter has a question for Uncle Jake, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Nonetheless, you even if you're not a kid, will like this Warrior Kid podcast.
Don't forget to check out that Warrior Kid that's making soap. Aiden, IrishOaksRanch.com, making Trooper soap, making Jocko soap. You can use that soap so that you can stay clean.
Yeah, always stay clean. Also, for the video version of this podcast, if you want to watch it rather than just listen to it, we do have a YouTube channel. Also, excerpts on there if you want to, share some elements of the podcast that are good takeaways individually. Share them with your friends.
It's not like, hey, I got a cool idea for you. Here's a 4-hour podcast. Watch the whole thing.
Just listen to it. You'll catch it. I forget where it is, but it's in there somewhere. Yeah, they're not going to listen to that on a whim.
Yeah.
So you can just,
send them a little hitter. That's what we should have called them. Little video hitters.
Sure.
There you go. I like that better than McNuggets.
No, Brad, you're the one who made up Jocko McNuggets.
That doesn't mean I can't change my mind and come up with something better. A little video hitter.
All right, there it is.
Make that video hitter. You need to make more of those hitters.
Yes, sir. There you go. But nonetheless, if you are interested in any video things.
Hitters?
In hitters, in regards to
seem
this
on board with
podcast. Yeah, it's probably an acquired situation. It just sounds cooler when Theo says it.
Yeah,
See
I know.
what I'm saying?
I know.
So I'm like, I'm used to you saying it, so that's cool. But me saying I'm not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll get there.
Also, psychological warfare that has a bunch of little short audio hitters that you can listen to if you need to power through a moment of weakness. It's on iTunes, Google Play, or other MP3 platforms. Flipsidecanvas.com. My brother Dakota Meyer, he started a company. Why? Because he's a badass and he wanted to start a company. And the company that he started is making things to hang on your wall. Art, we'll call it.
With layers.
Little art with layers. The art has layers. Little art hitters that you can put up on your wall. I can tell I frustrated you with that.
No, man, keep it going. It's good.
And you get those, you can get them from flipsidecanvas.com. Makes all kinds of cool stuff. One that says good. One that says all your excuses are lies. One that says time is running out. One that says discipline equals freedom.
Yeah.
So you can get those. Flipsidecanvas.com. Support my brother, Dakota Meyer.
Also, when you're expanding your home gym, your home exercise situation, really, go to Onnit. So go onnit.com/Jocko. This is where you can get your kettlebells. Good kettlebells. Artistic kettlebells. I know.
A lot of art floating around here today.
Oh, yeah, big time. The primal bells. They got the Star Wars ones now. Anyway, got that one. I think I'm going to get another one, man. The kettlebells have been a huge part of my recent workouts.
That's good.
Oh, yeah, building that functional strength. Nonetheless, you can get rings there as well. Some immunity stuff. I say that because I've been on that recently.
Mm-hmm.
You see little kids running around with colds. Runny noses.
Yeah.
Right, you just hit
when your kid's going to school, your kid is just a host for disease to bring back into your house.
A little lab.
Especially when they're crying.
I know, man. F minus. Anyway, so I've been on that. The Shroom Tech Immune. It's a good one. Anyway, they got a lot of good stuff on there. So onnit.com/Jocko.
We got some books. I have a new book coming out. It is called Way of the Warrior Kid 3, Where There's a Will. It is available for pre-order right now. The publishing company needs to know how many of these books to print. The publishing company is me.
Sure.
So if you want to have this book, please pre-order it ASAP so I know how many copies to print. The name of the book is Way of the Warrior Kid 3, and I'm actually putting that on the cover. Now, when I made Way of the Warrior Kid 2, I said to the publisher, hey, can we put Way of the Warrior Kid 2 on the cover? And they said, no, we can't do that. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, if people know it's the second in the series and they don't have the first, they won't buy it. So we can't put that on the cover. We don't want to hurt sales. Mm-hmm. So I said, I thought to myself, we're just trying to confuse people. So they will buy more. I'm not trying to confuse anybody here. No. Way of the Warrior Kid 3 on the cover. Yeah. It's the third book in the series. John Bozak, the artist, thinks it's the best book in the series. Lessons to be learned.
Interesting.
There's also Way of the Warrior Kid 2, which is called Mark's Mission. And there's the original Way of the Warrior Kid. And then on top of that, for your children and possibly for you too. We got Mikey and the Dragons. You can order that one now for your younger kids. Also, the Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. Already talked about that one. The audio of that is on iTunes, not on Audible. So it's on MP3. And then Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership, which I wrote with my brother Leif Babin. And we talk about leadership from our perspective, going from the military, combat, taking those lessons learned, bringing them back, and now turning them over to the civilian sector. And on top of that, we also have a leadership consultancy called Echelon Front, where we solve problems through leadership. If you want us to come to your company and help you with your leadership, go to echelonfront.com. If you want someone on my team to come and speak to your company, including me, don't reach out to a speakers bureau. Don't Google Jocko speaking and click on the first advertisement that pops up. Go to echelonfront.com, which echelonfront.com will pop up as well, but you might not recognize that. So come straight to the source, echelonfront.com, if you need leadership leadership help at your company, team, or organization. We've also got the muster May 23rd and 24th in Chicago, sold out. September 19th and 20th in Denver, getting to be sold out. Sydney, Australia, December 4th and 5th. Looking forward to all those. Check extremeownership.com if you want to get in the mix at the muster. If you can't come to the muster, but you want to get in the mix, go to efonline.com. This is interactive leadership training. It is based on what we do at the muster, on getting granular on the principles that are in the book Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership, and everything I talk about on this podcast. It's in there, concise, clear ways so people can understand it. And then on top of that, it's interactive. So you get put into leadership situations. You have to learn to make decisions. It's a great program. And if you want to check that out, it's efonline.com. And then last, we've got EF Overwatch, which is it's our manning company, where we will take individuals from special operations and the combat aviation communities and put them into leadership positions inside of companies that need leadership inside their organization. So if you're looking for leadership, which you are, because every problem that you have in a company or on a team is because of leadership. So if you need help with your leadership, go to efoverwatch.com and fill out the information.
And if you want to cruise hard with us more, we're on the interwebs, Twitter, Instagram, and the Facebook.
The what?
The Facebook. The Facebook. You know the Facebook is the original name.
Yeah. I did know that.
And Justin Timberlake was like, hey, not Justin Timberlake, Sean Parker. Anyway, You ever seen the movie? It shows.
I have not seen it. What was the reason?
He's like, drop the. Just Facebook.
Who said that?
Cleaner. Sean Parker, the Napster guy.
Oh, okay.
Played by Justin Timberlake in the movie.
Oh, got it.
Very good.
Well, if you're on those platforms.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm
at Echo Charles. Jocko is at Jocko Willing on all of them. Boom.
Keep it simple like that. And thanks to all of our military folks out there who keep their morale high and keep their bayonets sharp out there on the line. And thanks to the police and law enforcement and firefighters and paramedics and EMTs and dispatchers and correctional officers and border patrol and Secret Service and all the other first responders. Thanks to all of you for standing up and facing evil so that we don't have to. And to everyone else out there, your morale might be low from time to time. It can happen. It can happen to anyone, and it does happen to everyone. And when it does start to slip, recognize it, and then remember that you can actually do something about it. Like young Ivor Roberry said in that letter, don't grieve, don't cry, don't worry or fret. Surely there's no better way of dying, he said, than fighting, than standing up. And that is what you do. You fight, you stand up, you impose discipline on your life, you face the things that you fear, the things that are crushing your morale. You face them. And you lift up your morale through force of will, by leading, by going out and getting after it. And so until next time, this is Echo and Jocko. Out.